Chapter 1028. Soon Ji Tianxing and the green light treasure tree were engulfed by the overwhelming flames. Everything within a radius of dozens of miles had turned into a world of flames. Even the surface of the sea down below had been evaporated by the raging fire, forming a gigantic whirlpool that had a radius of tens of miles. The 1,000-meter-tall green light treasure tree had tens of thousands of green branches that were set ablaze and turned to ashes in the fire. The torch dragon stood high in the sky and looked down at the world of flames and the sea below, revealing a contemptuous sneer. "Ha, little bastard, with your insignificant strength, you dare to fight with this king?" However, as soon as it finished speaking, the flames gradually extinguished and a dazzling green light lit up the sky again. The 1,000-meter-tall Xian light treasure tree once again revealed its gigantic figure, standing tall in the sky. Although tens of thousands of branches on the tree had been burned and there were many pitch-black holes, there were still hundreds of millions of branches on the tree. However, there were hundreds of millions of branches on the entire tree. Even if tens of thousands of branches were lost, it would not be a big deal. Swoosh! With a flash of green light, the tree shrunk thousands of times and became only a foot tall. Ji Tianxing's figure appeared, standing in the sky unscathed, holding the green light treasure tree in his palm. Seeing this scene, Zhu Long's eyes immediately widened, revealing a look of deep shock. It simply couldn't believe that Ji Tianxing was actually able to block its ultimate killer move. Lightning! Just as it was in a daze, Ji Tianxing put away the green light treasure tree and suddenly shouted, opening the third eye on his forehead. In the golden eye, the blue pupil released the power of lightning that could destroy the world. It condensed into a pillar of lightning and blasted at the torch dragon. The torch dragon was caught off guard. When it came back to its senses and wanted to dodge, it was too late. Boom! Amidst a deafening boom, the lightning beam struck the torch dragon, causing it to cry out in pain as it was sent flying. The crackling lightning arcs enveloped its enormous body, charring it to the point that it was as black as charcoal, causing it to twitch wildly. It was incomparably furious. It opened its mouth and let out an angry roar, but it emitted black smoke. Under the heavy injuries, not only did it look battered and exhausted, even its body was somewhat numb, and its combat strength was greatly weakened. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianxing did not hesitate to pursue and launch a fierce attack. Burning Sky Palm. He raised his left arm that was as red as magma and released endless crimson fire. It condensed into a giant flaming palm that was as big as a mountain and slammed it toward the torch dragon. Roar! The torch dragon raised its head unyieldingly and let out an earth-shattering roar. It struggled with all its might, twisting its mountain-like body in an attempt to avoid the attack of the burning sky palm. However, its speed was too slow and it was unable to dodge in the end. Boom! Amidst a dull, loud sound, its body was hit by the giant flaming palm, and half of its body sank into the sea of fire. The violent and peerless power slapped it away, and it crashed heavily onto an island 20 miles away. Boom! A 10-mile-long ravine was formed on the island, and dust and gravel splashed into the sky. The torch dragon was charred and covered in blood as it lay in the ravine, moaning in pain. The turbulent seawater immediately surged into the ravine and quickly filled it up. The torch dragon struggled for a moment before it got up from the ravine. Its body was surging with a vast black smoke, and it quickly suppressed its injuries and healed the wounds that were full of devastation. Although its dragon body was still intact, it was not destroyed. However, it was severely injured again and again, and its strength was quickly drained, and its combat strength was weakened by as much as 40%. It flew into the sky with a belly full of rage. When it saw Ji Tianxing charging toward it, it desperately released all its strength and performed its strongest killing move. Raging flames of destruction. It roared wildly and its body was ignited with blood-red flames. It released an overwhelming dragon breath that turned into more than a dozen enormous dragon breath fire pillars that blasted toward Ji Tianxing. Seeing more than a dozen dragon breath fire pillars appear, Ji Tianxing's face immediately turned serious, and his eyes flashed with thick killing intent. When he was in the imperial court of the water race, Tai's destructive dragon breath had left a deep impression on him. From then on, he knew that dragon breath was the strongest killing move of the dragon race, and it was so powerful that it could destroy the world. The torch dragon had been severely injured by him and had lost its mind in anger. He was not surprised that it would use a secret technique like dragon breath fire pillars. Facing the dozen or so destructive dragon breath fire pillars that were hundreds of meters long, he did not hesitate to use the seal of mountains and rivers and enter the artifact space. Boom 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 boom. In the next moment, more than a dozen dragon breath fire pillars slammed into the seal of mountains and rivers. The house-sized golden seal was blasted away on the spot, and it crashed into the sea 10 miles away, falling thousands of meters deep into the sea. A huge whirlpool dozens of miles wide appeared on the surface of the sea, and huge waves thousands of feet high were stirred up. Then more than a dozen dragon breath fire pillars slammed into the sea, evaporating all the water in a radius of dozens of miles, revealing the dark brown seabed. The dragon breath fire pillars had blasted a dozen or so deep craters in the seabed that was covered with reefs. The cold and hard reefs were burned red by the dragon breath and turned into magma. Such destructive power was truly horrifying and frightening. The soul-level mid-grade seal of mountains and rivers dimmed after being hit by the dragon breath fire pillars, and its power was immediately exhausted. More than a dozen pitch-black craters were left on the surface of the dark golden seal, and it had completely lost the luster of an artifact. Without a doubt, the seal of mountains and rivers had been heavily damaged by the dragon breath fire pillars. Fortunately, artifacts of this grade had the ability to self-recover. It would take about 2 or 3 months for the seal of mountains and rivers to slowly recover. The torch dragon had paid a heavy price after releasing the dragon breath fire pillars. Its strength was rapidly declining and its essence, energy and spirit were exhausted and blurry. It was panting heavily. However, it believed that with the destructive might of the dragon breath pillar, it would definitely be able to kill Zhi Tianxing. Even if it could not kill Zhi Tianxing, it could severely injure him. A moment later, the dragon breath fire pillars gradually dissipated. Seawater surged over from all directions and drowned the magma rapidly, filling up the empty areas and craters. Huge waves surged on the surface of the sea, and the remaining heat and mist dissipated slowly as well. Right then, a dazzling golden light burst out from the bottom of the sea. It was Zhi Tianxing's figure, and his entire body was surging with a dazzling divine golden light. Heaven-splitting sword. His voice was loud as a bell and he roared with a murderous aura. Instantly he charged in front of the torch dragon and slashed down with all his might with the broken sword. Not only did that slash contain his lifetime of cultivation and attainments in the sword Dao, it was also the strongest move of the unity of heaven and man and sword. At this moment Zhi Tianxing's combat strength erupted to its peak. He released a might and sword intent that could destroy the heavens and the earth, causing even the torch dragon to be shocked and terrified. Chapter 1029. Bam! A deafening explosion erupted, spreading across a radius of 100 miles, shaking the sky and the sea. The 1,000-meter-long torch dragon was struck by the 100-meter-long sword head-on. It was sent flying with blood splattering everywhere. Coincidentally, the sword struck the middle of its 2 heads. Its body was split into 2 halves, and the 2 dragon heads separated, turning into 2 black dragons. What was even stranger was that its body did not collapse on the spot. Instead, it surged with a monstrous black light that protected itself. Roar. A dragon roar that shook the 9 heavens sounded. After the torch dragon was split into 2, it turned into 2 huge dragons. Its wounds also healed rapidly. It did not hesitate to burn its blood essence and soul, spending 200 years of cultivation to protect its body and suppress its injuries. It glared viciously at Zhi Tianxing and memorized his appearance and aura. Then it turned and flew into the distance. After all, it was severely injured and was at the end of its tether. It only had about 40% of its combat strength left. If it continued to fight, it would definitely not be Zhi Tianxing's match. Even if it was not killed, its body would be destroyed. For now, it could only endure the humiliation and anger and escape first. However, how could Zhi Tianxing let it escape as it wished? Torch Dragon, you're definitely going to die today. How dare you try to escape? Stop dreaming. Zhi Tianxing roared angrily. His body emitted a dazzling golden light as he chased after it with the broken sword. Swoosh. He was as fast as a stream of light. In the blink of an eye, he had flown more than 10 miles and caught up with the fleeing Torch Dragon. When the Torch Dragon saw him chasing after it, it was scared out of its wits. It only hesitated for a moment before the 2 heads and the 2 halves of its body fled in 2 different directions. Since it had 2 heads now that it was split into 2, it was equivalent to having 2 bodies. Even if Ji Tianxing destroyed one of its bodies, its other body would definitely be able to escape successfully. After recuperating for 100 years, it would be able to return to its peak. Ji Tianxing was also stunned when he saw the two bodies running away in different directions. However, he was only stunned for a moment before he released his sword soul without hesitation. It turned into a 100-meter-long divine golden sword and blasted toward the giant dragon on the left. Sword of Judgment. Although this was still the same sword technique from back then. However, what he used was neither the sword embryo nor the sword heart. Instead, it was the sword soul that was several times stronger. Swish. The giant golden sword transformed from the sword soul instantly pierced through the sky and struck the giant dragon on the left. Boom. With a muffled sound, the giant golden sword accurately struck its head. Instantly, the huge dragon head was blasted into smithereens, exploding into pieces of flesh and blood that blotted out the sky. Half of Torch Dragon's body was destroyed just like that. The dragon's body, which had been severed into several pieces, fell from the sky, mixed with countless pieces of flesh and black blood, and fell into the vast sea. Ji Tianxing didn't have time to search for its dragon crystal and soul crystal, and immediately chased after the giant dragon on the right. At this moment, the giant dragon on the right had already fled 25 miles away. It witnessed the other half of its body being blasted to pieces with its own eyes and was truly terrified. It unleashed all its potential and fled without caring about anything else. Swoosh. It was like a black stream of light, exploding with a speed that was twice as fast as usual as it fled desperately in the sky. Ji Tianxing didn't hesitate either. He summoned his golden sword soul and turned it into a 3-meter-long divine golden sword and flew on it. Swish. He turned into a golden stream of light, streaking across the sky like a shooting star, and chased after the giant dragon relentlessly. The distance between the two parties was rapidly closing. In just a few minutes, Ji Tianxing caught up with the giant black dragon. Sword of Judgment. He activated the golden sword under his feet and turned it into a 100-meter-long divine golden sword. It released a destructive power and stabbed toward the giant dragon ruthlessly. The giant dragon was scared half to death. It desperately twisted its body and changed the direction of its flight, trying to avoid the attack of the Sword of Judgment. However, the Sword of Judgment locked onto its divine soul aura and changed its direction, hitting it with a loud bang. Boom. A dull sound exploded, reverberating in the sky above the sea. This giant dragon was also hit by the Sword of Judgment. Its head exploded on the spot, and its 1,000-meter-long body was also minced into several pieces. Chunks of flesh and blood, mixed with black blood, fell from the sky and fell into the deep sea with a series of plopping sounds. The torch dragon was finally killed. Even if it had extraordinary talent and split its two heads and turned into two bodies, it still couldn't escape death. Until the moment of its death, it still couldn't believe that Ji Tianxing, who had just broken through to the soul-tempering stage, had such terrifying combat strength that he could completely kill it. This was definitely a miracle, an unprecedented miracle. They were both soul-tempering stage powerhouses, but who could cross 4 stages and kill an opponent? The torch dragon had lived for thousands of years, but it had never heard of such a thing. It just so happened that it met Ji Tianxing, who used its own life to prove that this miracle had happened. Huff. Ji Tianxing let out a long breath and recalled the sword soul into his mind. In order to kill the torch dragon, he had expended 50% of his strength. He was completely exhausted and had even suffered some minor injuries. After all, the torch dragon was not an ordinary soul-tempering stage powerhouse. It was also a dragon with outstanding combat strength. Ji Tianxing stood in the sky, panting silently for a while before diving into the deep sea to search for spoils of war. He found the torch dragon's corpse and dug out half a soul crystal, a dragon crystal and many dragon bones from the corpse. After putting these materials into his spatial ring, he flew back to the sea and dived into the deep sea to continue his search. Not long after, he found another half a soul crystal and many dragon bones. I didn't expect this torch dragon to be so unique. It had 2 heads and could actually split the soul crystal into 2 and store it in 2 heads. Ji Tianxing sighed in amazement as he sorted out the spoils of war. Those dragon bones were precious materials for refining weapons and medicine. He stored them in his spatial ring to sell or use in the future. As for the dragon crystal, he wanted to give it to the little black dragon so that it could devour and refine the dragon crystal to quickly increase its strength. As for the 2 soul crystal fragments of the torch dragon, he used the black hole in his palm to devour them and use them to recover the energy of the burial of heaven. After arranging the spoils of war, he flew back to the island that had turned into ruins. He burrowed deep into the ground and hid to recuperate and recover his strength. He consumed a few spirit pills and more than 10 spirit stones to recuperate for 2 days. His injuries were 80% healed and his strength was restored to its peak. On the morning of the 3rd day, he finished recuperating and prepared to leave the island. At this moment, the deep and powerful voice of the burial of heaven sounded in his mind. Tianxing, you can't leave the sinkhole yet. There's something more important that you have to do as soon as possible. Tianxing was stunned and asked with joy, Burial of heaven, weren't you heavily injured and in a deep sleep? Chapter 10:30. Burial of heaven responded. That's right. I managed to recover some of my vitality after consuming those soul crystals and fey cores. The soul crystal you gave me just now has even more powerful soul energy. After I consume it, I can recover nearly 20% of my vitality. Tianxing knew that it was talking about the torch dragon's soul crystal. Burial of heaven, you said that I can't leave yet because there's something more important I need to do as soon as possible. What is it? Burial of heaven said in a low and serious voice. You've already obtained the illusory feather ice gold and the boundless stone. These 2 materials are top-notch refining materials. With my current strength, I'm still unable to smelt these 2 materials to repair the broken sword and increase its power. However, I know that in the northwest of the Eastern Sea's sinkhole, there's a magical sun-moon furnace. It's a divine artifact of heaven and earth. You have to find the sun-moon furnace as soon as possible and use it to smelt these 2 materials to repair the broken sword and increase its power. Sun-moon smelting furnace? Tianxing frowned in confusion, unable to make heads or tails of it. Burial of heaven, what's that? Is it a dangerous place or a divine artifact? Burial of heaven said in a deep voice, it's a rare sight in the world and also a divine artifact of heaven and earth. You just have to search in the northwest of the sinkhole. It's very unique. When you see it, you'll definitely recognize it. With that, Burial of heaven did not say anything else. It went back to sleep and consumed the torch dragon's soul crystal. Tianxing did not ask any more questions. He hurriedly left the island and flew towards the northwest. While he was flying, he was secretly calculating in his heart. I wonder what the sun-moon furnace that Burial of heaven mentioned is. I hope I can find it as soon as possible to repair the broken sword and increase its power. This way, when I enter the northern desert, I'll be able to fight with greater strength. Only then will I have a better chance of saving Yao Yao. Time passed quickly as the sun and moon alternated. Unknowingly, 24 days passed. Tianxing flew continuously for over 20 days before he finally entered the northwest of the sinkhole. In these 20-odd days he had traversed more than 1,000,000 miles of sea, flying over countless islands and giant reefs. Of course, he had also experienced countless dangers. Many times he had been besieged by powerful demonic beasts and sea beasts. The sea demon behemoths that lived in the East Sea's sinkhole were at least at the divine essence realm. Those that could occupy a region as their territory were all at the soul refinement realm. Naturally, the giant sea monsters that attacked him were all in the spirit refinement realm. Luckily, most of the sea demons were below the 5th level of the soul refining realm. Whenever he tried his best and used all his trump cards and ultimate skills, he was always able to kill those giant sea monsters and turn the situation around. After killing the sea demon beasts, he would plunder the soul crystals, monster cores, and other items for the Burial of heaven to recover. However, he had also encountered several powerful 5th and 6th level soul refinement stage demonic beasts. Of course, he couldn't defeat such a terrifying giant sea monster. He was badly wounded by the giant sea monster and could only run away in a sorry state. There were even a few times where he almost lost his life. But in the end, he gritted his teeth and pulled through. He shook off the giant sea monsters that were chasing him and escaped danger. At this moment, the sun was setting in the west. He stood on the vast azure sea and he was already mentally exhausted and covered in dust. The white robe he wore had long since become tattered and covered in bloodstains. His previous experience and encounters made him believe that what Miracle Dr. Bailey, Divine Master Blackfeather, Yun Zhongqi, and the others said was absolutely true. The East Sea's sinkhole was indeed the most dangerous forbidden land in the world. Even a soul refinement stage powerhouse wouldn't dare to barge in recklessly. The slightest carelessness could cost him his life. He looked around the sea and muttered softly, "Now that I'm mentally exhausted and weak, I have to find a place to rest for a day before continuing to search for the sun-moon furnace." After making up his mind, he continued to fly in the northwest direction, searching for an island that he could land on. About 2 hours later he had flown for more than 4,000 miles. Finally he saw a huge black shadow on the sea in front of him. Although it was very far away, he could vaguely make out that it was a gigantic island that floated in the sky 1,000 feet high. Above the island was a sky covered by thin clouds, while below was the vast blue sea. The island floated silently in the sky without moving at all, as though it was rooted. Ji Tianqing frowned and muttered in confusion, "How can such a gigantic island float in the sky? Am I seeing things?" He sped up and flew forward, approaching the floating island rapidly. Before long he arrived near the gigantic island. At this moment he realized that he wasn't seeing things. It was truly an island with a radius of 150 kilometers that floated in the sky. The island was surrounded by reefs and green forests, and grass grew on the island. There were even flocks of seabirds and all sorts of strange-looking birds and beasts. Although this scene seemed very mysterious, as if it was a scene from a dream. But all of this was real. Ji Tianqing flew around the island and carefully observed it for an hour, but he couldn't find any clues. He couldn't figure out how the island could float in the sky. He used his spiritual energy to investigate and found that there was no array on the island. There was also no powerful force in the sea that supported the island. This is really strange. Without the support of an array and the power of heaven and earth, how can the island float in the sky? Can an island that floats in the sky still be called an island? It should be called a floating island, right? Ji Tianqing was filled with doubts and expectations. He landed on the gigantic floating island and looked around. The birds and beasts that lived on the island weren't very strong. There were no spirit refinement realm overlords. When he approached, the birds and beasts were all frightened and fled in all directions, fleeing far away. 2 hours later he confirmed that there was no danger on the floating island. He hid in a secluded place and began to recuperate. The sun quickly set in the sky and night fell. In the middle of the night, Ji Tianqing was immersed in cultivation. He was recuperating from his injuries and recovering his true essence and soul. However, he didn't realize that the gigantic floating island was actually moving silently. The floating island didn't tremble or shake at all. It flew quickly in the night sky and flew deeper into the ultimate. It was very fast, but it didn't bring about any strong winds or make any sound. The birds and beasts on the island didn't seem to notice, or perhaps they were already used to such strange changes. Ji Tianqing was immersed in cultivation and didn't notice the abnormality of the floating island. Several hours later the sky finally brightened. When the first glimmer of dawn appeared on the horizon, the flying island actually gradually came to a stop. Then the floating island stopped in the sky above the vast sea and stopped moving. Ji Tianqing recuperated for an entire night. His injuries and cultivation had mostly recovered. He ended his cultivation and flew to the sky above the island, preparing to leave. Chapter 1031. Ji Tianqing's eyesight and observation skills had reached the level of minute detail. Although the floating island was still surrounded by the blue sea, he could tell at a glance that this was definitely not the sea from yesterday. "I didn't leave the floating island last night, but now the floating island has appeared in another sea? Could it be that the floating island flew away on its own last night?" This absurd thought popped up in his mind. He found it inconceivable and unbelievable. However, other than this, he could not find any other reason to explain the changes before him. Forget it. Regardless of what's going on with this floating island, this place is not good. I can't stay here for long. He hurriedly left the floating island and flew northwest. However, he had only flown 2,000 miles when he saw another huge floating island in the sky ahead of him. Another floating island has appeared? The sea is too strange. No wonder Tai had such a strong reaction when I wanted to come to the sinkhole. Ji Tianqing flew past the giant floating island. Thinking back to what Tai had said to him, he gradually let go of it. Tai had once said that the East Sea sinkhole was not only the most dangerous forbidden land in the world, but also the most unique wonder. In the East Sea sinkhole, there were all sorts of unimaginable and inconceivable scenes. There were mountains hanging in the sky, seawater pouring into the sky, the sun sinking to the bottom of the sea, the moon reflecting the day. In short, the East Sea sinkhole was a forbidden land where yin and yang were in chaos and heaven and earth were inverted. When Ji Tianxing heard it, he only thought that it was a rumor and exaggeration. He did not take it to heart. Now that he had been in the sinkhole for more than a month, he had personally experienced many dangers and seen many wonders. He finally believed Tai's words and was no longer so curious about the strange floating island in front of him. He continued to fly towards the northwest. Not long after, he saw many more floating islands floating in the sky, motionless. Within a radius of tens of thousands of miles, there were dozens of huge floating islands. A day passed quickly. That night, as he hurried through the sky, he saw a huge floating island with his own eyes. It flew silently in the night sky. The floating island's flying speed was comparable to a half-step soul refinement realm expert, and it did not make any sound. Seeing this strange scene, he finally confirmed his conjecture. The next morning, he left the sea region filled with floating islands and entered another sea region. There were no floating islands in the sky above this ocean, but there were many huge reefs and thousands of meters tall mountains scattered about. Those towering mountains quietly floated high in the sky, towering in the thin clouds and thick fog, as if they were immortal mountains in the heavens. Fortunately, Ji Tianxing had seen the floating island before and was mentally prepared. He wasn't too surprised to see such a strange scene. If an ordinary person were to come here, they would probably be shocked to the point of incoherence. Originally, he wanted to fly to the floating mountain peaks to enjoy the scenery and investigate the situation within the mountain peaks. However, there were at least 3 to 5 spirit refinement realm beasts occupying each of the floating mountains. He didn't want to waste time fighting with those spirit refinement realm giant beasts. Therefore, he chose to circle around those floating mountains and continue flying deeper into the sinkhole. 2 days passed quickly. He left the floating mountain region and entered a new sea region. This sea region was relatively calm. He flew continuously for 20,000 kilometers and didn't encounter any strange scenes. At noon, when he was flying in the sky, he suddenly saw 2 huge black shadows appear on the surface of the sea ahead. Those were 2 towering mountain peaks that were 10,000 meters tall. They towered on the surface of the sea, seemingly supporting the sky. Of course, those 2 mountain peaks were submerged by the sea and were not floating in the air. Ji Tianxing increased his speed and flew over. When he got close, he saw a scene that he would never forget for the rest of his life. He saw that the parts of the 2 mountain peaks that were exposed above the sea both reached 10,000 meters tall. The mountains were as black as ink and not a single blade of grass grew. They were covered in traces of wind, frost, and the erosion of time. The 2 mountain peaks were separated by 50 kilometers. This sea region with a radius of 50 kilometers was actually an incomparably huge vortex. In the deepest part of the vortex, a golden blazing sun could be clearly seen lying quietly at the bottom of the sea, emitting a dazzling golden light. The seawater in all directions converged into dozens of huge blue water pillars that actually flew into the sky and poured into the 2 mountain peaks. At the top of the 2 mountain peaks, there was a lake that was filled with blue seawater. Endless seawater poured down from the sky, forming 2 majestic waterfalls that were 10,000 meters tall that poured into the vortex between the 2 mountains. Such a huge and spectacular waterfall, dozens of water pillars that flew into the sky, and the blazing sun that sank to the bottom of the sea. Ji Tianxing was filled with shock and amazement. The strange scenes that Tai described have all come true. Indeed, there are mountains hanging in the sky, seawater pouring into the sky, and the sun sinking to the bottom of the sea. Such an inconceivable scene is simply the masterpiece of the Creator. It's like a miracle created by the gods themselves. Truly incredible. Ji Tianxing stood in the air between the 2 mountains and looked down at the abyss vortex below. He stared at the blazing sun that sank to the bottom of the sea and murmured with amazement. How can the blazing sun sink to the bottom of the sea? Could it be the reflection of the seawater? He was filled with doubts. He subconsciously looked up at the sky and found that it was covered by thin clouds. Although it was daytime, there was a golden sun hanging high in the sky, but the sunlight was blocked by the thin clouds. No matter what, it was impossible for the golden sun to be reflected at the bottom of the sea. He couldn't help but suspect that the golden sun in the depths of the vortex must contain some mysteries. Thinking of this, his body trembled as he suddenly remembered what the burial of heaven had said before. I understand now. Could this be the sun-moon furnace that the burial of heaven mentioned? He looked down at the vortex from the sky. He looked at the golden sun. It was indeed like a huge furnace that was spewing out golden flames. If one looked down at the two mountain peaks, the giant vortex and the golden sun from the perspective of a peerless master, it really did look like a blazing sun furnace. However, the burial of heaven asked me to look for the sun-moon furnace. This strange scene only has a blazing sun. Where did the moon come from? This thought flashed through Ji Tianxing's mind as he looked around in confusion. When he looked up at the peaks of the two mountain peaks, he suddenly thought of something and hurriedly flew to the peak. He saw that there was a huge lake at the top of the two mountain peaks. In the clear light blue lake, there was a clear reflection of the bright moon. It was noon, so there was no moon in the sky. However, two bright moons could clearly be seen in the lakes at the two mountain peaks. This was definitely a strange scene, a miracle. Chapter 1032. Ji Tianxing could not understand. Why would the sun sink to the bottom of the sea and the moon shine on the peak of the mountain? How exactly did such a beautiful and miraculous landscape come into being? However, he was just thinking about it. He would not get to the bottom of it. He only needed to know that this was the sun-moon furnace he was looking for. That was enough. Burial of heaven, I have found the sun-moon furnace. He called out to burial of heaven in his mind and used his soul to send a message to burial of heaven. After a while, burial of heaven woke up from its slumber and said with a gratified tone, "Very good. This is the sun-moon furnace, the divine artifact of heaven and earth. Now we can finally use the divine power of heaven and earth to smelt the illusory feather ice gold and boundless stone to repair the broken sword and increase its power." Ji Tianxing also looked gratified and expectant. He asked, "Burial of heaven, after we use the sun-moon furnace to repair the broken sword, will the broken sword be restored and become a complete divine sword?" Burial of heaven said with a complicated tone, "With just these two materials, how can the broken sword be restored to its original state? Even after the sun-moon furnace is used to repair the broken sword, it will still be a broken sword. However, the quality, grade and power of the broken sword will increase by leaps and bounds. According to my estimation, the broken sword will be able to recover 10% of its power and be comparable to a high-grade soul-level magic treasure." Hearing its words, Ji Tianxing quickly nodded and showed an expectant expression. "That is great. Burial of heaven, when do we start?" "Now is the right time," Burial of heaven said in a deep and vigorous voice. "The sun-moon furnace at noon is the most powerful and can quickly smelt the illusory feather ice gold and boundless stone. Tianxing, take out those two materials and guard here. I will enter the sun-moon furnace alone to smelt the materials and repair the sword. Remember, every day at noon and midnight, you will circulate the crimson sun primordial fire and extreme Yin frigid fire respectively and pour them into the sun-moon furnace for 2 hours." After Burial of Heaven finished explaining, Ji Tianxing took out the broken sword, illusory feather ice gold and boundless stone. Shua. The pitch-black broken sword glowed with a mysterious and cold black light. It enveloped the illusory feather ice gold and the boundless stone and flew toward the sun-moon furnace below. Ji Tianxing stood in the sky and watched with his own eyes as the Burial of Heaven carried the two materials through the abyss-like vortex and into the bright golden sun. In the blink of an eye, the broken sword and the two materials disappeared, swallowed by the bright golden light. Only then did Ji Tianxing regain his composure. He slowly raised both of his palms and began to channel the scarlet yang real fire. His whole body was surging with a powerful aura, and there was a turbulent true essence surging in his body. Between his palms, endless red flames were released, pouring down towards the vortex below. Shua. Two huge pillars of fire descended from the sky and poured into the vortex, pouring into the golden sun. Instantly, the power of the sun-moon furnace was activated. The scorching sun emitted a dazzling golden light, which rapidly expanded to a radius of 100 miles, illuminating the entire vortex with golden light. On top of the two mountains in the clear lake, two bright and flawless moons also lit up with silvery white moonlight. Ji Tianxing could clearly feel the earth-shaking power released from the vortex. It was incomparably violent and unbelievably powerful. The violent and scorching invisible air currents overflowed, instantly evaporating the endless seawater, turning it into a vast mist that surged into the sky. Ji Tianxing was enveloped by the vast mist, enduring the impact of the invisible force. He could barely stand and his whole body trembled. What a powerful force! I'm standing in the sky so far away from the center of the vortex, but the residual power released by the sun-moon furnace is still so strong. One can imagine that the power of the sun-moon furnace is really destructive and can burn everything. This time he truly felt the power of heaven and earth and experienced the terrifying power of a divine artifact of heaven and earth. He didn't doubt that if he entered the sun-moon furnace, no matter how strong he was, or how powerful his magical treasures were, he would be melted into dregs. Even a mid-grade soul-level magical treasure would be melted into molten iron in the sun-moon furnace. He tried his best to hold on, using his true essence to form a shield to protect himself from the impact of the invisible force and air waves. He continued to inject the scarlet sun real fire into the sun-moon furnace, which consumed a lot of his true essence. His mind was also somewhat tired. Fortunately, 2 hours were not considered long and it passed quickly. After 2 hours he stopped casting and slowly withdrew his palms. Phew! He let out a long breath of turbid air, staring at the scorching sun under the vortex. He prayed silently in his heart, Burial of heaven, I hope everything goes well for you. Unfortunately, Burial of Heaven was in the sun-moon furnace, using all his strength to smelt the sword and the two materials, so he couldn't hear his voice at all. After panting for a moment, Xianxia took out 2 elixirs and swallowed them, silently circulating his true essence to recover. He sat in the sky between the 2 mountains, circulating his true essence to recover his strength. At the same time he was guarding Burial of Heaven, constantly paying attention to the movements in all directions. More than 4 hours later the curtain of night fell. 10 hours later it was midnight again. In the gloomy night sky, a bright moon hung high in the sky. At this moment the sun-moon furnace had undergone a subtle change. The golden sun at the bottom of the vortex had shrunk to its normal size, and its light had become restrained and calm. In the lake at the top of the 2 mountains, the 2 bright moons had become incomparably huge, bright and dazzling. The bright and flawless moonlight illuminated the night sky with a blazing white. Xianxia followed Burial of Heaven's instructions and hurriedly used the extreme frost fire. His palms released 2 gray pillars of fire, pouring them into the sun-moon furnace. He immediately felt that the power of the sun-moon furnace had also undergone a change. The invisible power that overflowed from the vortex was actually ice-cold. He was startled for a moment, but immediately realized that the change in power of the sun-moon furnace contained the profundity of the great Tao of heaven and earth. I understand now. The sun is yang and the moon is yin. Every day the sun and moon will alternate and the sun-moon furnace will alternate between yin and yang every day. Burial of Heaven wants to refine the divine sword and smelt the materials. Not only does it need the help of the yang fire of heaven and earth, it also needs the help of the yin fire of heaven and earth. The combination of yin and yang is the great Tao of heaven and earth, and only then can a true divine weapon be forged. After comprehending all this, Xianxia was even more shocked by the miraculous effects of the sun-moon furnace. He was also full of anticipation for the power of the refined broken sword. Unknowingly, a new day had arrived. At noon on the 2nd day he used the scarlet sun primordial fire and poured it into the sun-moon furnace. At midnight he continued to use the extreme frost fire and poured it into the vortex. Day after day passed. Every day he would pour primordial fire and frost fire into the sun-moon furnace. The rest of the time he would cultivate and recover his true essence. Just like that, 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. At noon on the 10th day, the blazing sun in the sun-moon furnace blossomed with golden light that was 10 times more dazzling than before. Swoosh! Following the sound of something breaking through the air, an incomparably huge ancient sword wrapped in sacred golden light flew out of the sun-moon furnace. Chapter 1033. When the divine sword was born, a gigantic golden sword shadow tore through the sky and soared into the sky. The area within a 100-mile radius was shrouded in a dazzling golden light. Heaven and earth were filled with violent sword aura and a divine aura that looked down on the universe. Once the divine sword appeared, who could compete with it? Even the sun and moon were overshadowed by the divine sword's radiance and became dim. Xianxia stood in the sky and watched the divine sword fly into the sky excitedly. He clenched his fists excitedly and expectantly. This is great. The burial of heaven is finally finished tempering. These 10 days of hard work and perseverance are all worth it. In these 10 days he had been casting spells day and night, using the extreme yang primordial fire and extreme yin frigid fire to help the sun-moon furnace temper the divine sword. Now he was already mentally and physically exhausted. He had used up a lot of his true essence and was a little dispirited. However, when he saw the divine sword being born and the earth-shattering scene of divine light, he was extremely gratified. He felt that all his hard work was worth it. After a long time, the divine golden light that covered the sky gradually dissipated. The sun-moon furnace also gradually calmed down. The golden flames and the silver moonlight also gradually disappeared. Zhoush. The divine sword flew back from the sky and returned to Zhi Tianxing. On the surface, the divine sword looked like a broken sword like before. However, although the sword was broken, it was not broken or old. The mottled rust and cracks on the sword had all been repaired. It was now shiny and cold. The cracks on the blade were also repaired. There was a faint flowing light on the blade, which contained a sharp aura that could cut through heaven and earth. Of course, the broken sword still had an ancient aura, gloomy and weathered. Zhi Tianxing reached out and grabbed the sword hilt. With a casual wave, the divine sword let out a trembling hum and shot out an extremely sharp sword aura. The sword aura was shapeless and formless. It instantly slashed into the sea below. Bam! A 1,000-meter-long gully appeared on the calm surface of the sea, revealing the seabed that was covered with sand and creating huge waves that were 100 meters tall. The power of the sword aura was so shocking that it made Zhi Tianxing frown. His eyes were filled with shock. Such formidable might is absolutely not something a high-grade soul-rank magic treasure can compare to. As soon as he said that, the voice of the burial of heaven came from the broken sword. That's right. The effects of these 10 days of tempering and recovery were better than I had expected. The strength of the broken sword is comparable to a supreme-grade soul-level Dharma treasure. Its material is very close to an essence soul-level Dharma treasure. Hearing its words, Zhi Tianxing immediately showed a gratified expression and nodded. I see. No wonder I feel that the power of the broken sword has increased by 7 or 8 times. He held the broken sword in his hand and looked at it with shining eyes. His tone was somewhat emotional as he said, after spending half a year and traveling across half the continent, I have finally achieved my goal. Burial of heaven, I'm leaving the ultimate for the northern desert. Burial of heaven pondered for a moment before saying in a deep voice, Tianxing, leaving the sinkhole isn't a problem, but you can't head to the northern desert immediately. You've just broken through to the soul cultivation stage and your martial arts foundation is not stable enough. You haven't condensed the divine soul Dharma I and you haven't cultivated the sword soul Tao. You've already waited for half a year. It doesn't matter if you delay for another 10 days or half a month. I hope you can cultivate the sword soul Tao and condense the divine soul Dharma I first. Burial of heaven's words were very pertinent. After Zhi Tianxing heard it, he pondered for a moment and nodded in agreement. Good. Sharpening the axe will not delay the work of cutting wood. I'll find a place to cultivate the sword soul Tao and condense the divine soul Dharma I first. When I'm stronger, I'll head to the northern desert. Only then will I have a better chance of rescuing Yao Yao. He made up his mind and prepared to find a place to cultivate in seclusion. Burial of heaven reminded him in a timely manner, there's no need to go elsewhere. Cultivate here. With the help of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered by the sun-moon furnace, you'll be able to achieve twice the results with half the effort. Zhi Tianxing looked at the whirlpool under his feet and then at the peak of the mountain on his left. He flew toward the peak of the mountain. He landed on the peak of the mountain and set up 2 defensive formations by the lake. Then he sat on a large blue stone and began to cultivate in seclusion. His divine soul passed through the pitch-black whirlpool in his dantian and entered Kenshin's tomb. Zhoush. With a flash of brilliance, the golden sword of divine soul entered the gray and cold space and transformed into his appearance. He flew over the gray and cold wilderness and arrived near the 18 tombstones. Since burial of heaven returned to the divine sword, the heaven-reaching sword steel that was thousands of feet tall had disappeared. Now there were only 18 pitch-black and cold tombstones left on the wilderness. The 9 tombstones on the left were empty. The records of the sword heart Tao had long disappeared. He looked at the 9 tombstones on the right and saw a few lines of ancient seal characters engraved on the first tombstone. There were only a few hundred words, but they were mysterious and extraordinarily profound. They recorded the first level of the Sword Soul Tao. The other 8 tombstones were empty. He had to cultivate the first level of the Sword Soul Tao before he could see the following mnemonics. Zhi Tianxing had already understood this point. He ignored the other 8 tombstones and stared at the ancient characters on the first tombstone. He carefully read the first level of the Sword Soul Tao. About an hour later he had memorized the mnemonics of the Sword Soul Tao. He could recite them backwards. Then his divine soul left Kenshin's tomb and returned to his body. He began to comprehend the mnemonics of the Sword Soul Tao. With his talent and comprehension, it would take him about a month to gradually comprehend the first level of the Sword Soul Tao. However, Burial of Heaven took the initiative to explain the Sword Soul Tao to him. It dissected the mnemonics of the Sword Soul Tao for him so that he could quickly comprehend the essence and profound meaning of the Sword Soul Tao. Tianxing, the sword heart Tao that you cultivated in the past is a martial Tao that cultivates the body and the sword. When you cultivate it to perfection, you can reach the realm of having no sword in your hand and the sword in your heart. This is the limit of the mortal martial Tao. Your attainments in sword techniques in the martial Tao world can be called a grandmaster of the sword Tao. However, the Sword Soul Tao is an even more profound and mysterious soul Tao. It has already surpassed the mortal martial Tao. This is the realm between the martial Tao and the divine Tao. It focuses on refining the soul. The Sword Soul Tao is not only about using the soul to condense the sword, but also about using the soul to control the sword. It integrates the profound meaning of the sword Tao into the soul. If you can cultivate the Sword Soul Tao and reach perfection, you can turn everything in the world into a sword. All the power in the world can be used by you. At that time, you will become the #1 person under the divine Tao. Your sword soul will be immortal and indestructible. Your sword will travel through the void and roam the galaxy. After listening to Burial of Heaven's explanation, Zhi Tianxing had a deeper understanding of the Sword Soul Tao. His heart was filled with shock and yearning. He vaguely felt that the Sword Soul Tao was not only an even more profound and unfathomable sword Tao, but also a soul-refining Tao that had never existed since ancient times. Once he cultivated the Sword Soul Tao, he would definitely shock the world and be invincible. He would have the terrifying power to control 10,000 swords and shatter the galaxy. Filled with anticipation and longing, he began to cultivate in seclusion. Chapter 1034. The Sun-Moon Furnace was a divine artifact of the heavens and earth, gathering the spiritual energy of the heavens and earth within a radius of 1,000,000 kilometers. Zhi Tianxing sat by the side of the moon reflection lake at the peak of the mountain, cultivating bitterly day and night in seclusion, continuously absorbing vast amounts of spiritual energy. As time passed, his strength continued to increase, and so did the strength of his spirit. After a full 8 days, he finally mastered the first level of the Sword Soul Tao, officially establishing the foundation of the Sword Soul Tao. Although he had long reached the soul refinement realm, he had only truly stepped into the Sword Soul Tao now. A door to a higher world of the Sword Tao was opened by him. On the morning of the 9th day, Zhi Tianxing stopped cultivating the Sword Soul Tao. With the help of the divine sword, he began to circulate the strength of his spirit, attempting to condense a soul Dharma eye. On this continent, all transcendents who had reached the soul refinement realm would condense a soul Dharma eye. This was the symbol of a soul refinement realm expert, and the number of soul Dharma eyes one possessed represented the corresponding level of strength. Furthermore, the soul Dharma eye was also a great source of strength for a soul refinement realm expert. With the soul Dharma eye, a soul refinement realm expert could see through the mysteries of the heavens and earth, control the strength of his spirit even more meticulously, and even execute a soul domain. All in all, only those who had condensed a soul Dharma eye could be considered a true soul refinement realm expert. Zhi Tianxing was no exception. He had to condense a soul Dharma eye as soon as possible. Only then could he be considered to have officially reached the first level of the soul refinement realm. Lawful embodiment of heaven and earth, only truth can guide me, soul Dharma I can break through the void. He sat cross-legged on the green rock, reciting a strange and obscure incantation in his mind. Not long ago he had obtained the heavenly observation record in the Eastern Mountain residence. This was an incantation he had seen in the book, The Cultivation Insights of the Eastern Mountain Exalt. It could help him condense a soul Dharma eye. Following the guidance of the incantation and the cultivation experiences of the Eastern Mountain Exalt, He continuously circulated the strength of his spirit sword, wanting to condense a soul Dharma eye. He was exceptionally focused on his cultivation, even forgetting the passage of time. Unknowingly, 5 days had passed. Not only had Ji Tianxing failed to condense a soul Dharma eye, he hadn't even managed to condense a soul Dharma eye's embryonic form. He had no choice but to stop cultivating, frowning, his brows furrowed, pondering over and night, with a grave expression on his face. How could this be? It's been 5 days, but I haven't even comprehended a trace of the true essence of divine soul Dharma eyes? This was completely impossible. With my innate talent and comprehension ability, coupled with the Eastern Mountain Exalt's insights on cultivation and the help of the broken sword, as well as the fact that I've cultivated the pure heart Dharma eye, logically speaking, I should be able to condense the divine soul Dharma eye very soon. Just as he was racking his brains but was still puzzled, the voice of the burial of heaven came from the broken sword. Tianxing, using the cultivation experience of our predecessors to reach your goal faster is indeed a shortcut to increasing your strength. But you are different. The sword heart Tao and sword soul Tao that you cultivate are unique in this world. Condensing the Dharma eyes of the divine soul is related to your future cultivation of the divine soul and the Tao of sword soul. In this matter, you cannot borrow the experience of others. You must rely on your own comprehension and find your own Tao of the soul. Hearing burial of heaven's reminder, Ji Tianxing immediately guessed the reason and understood his direction. That's right. Although the Eastern Mountain Exalt was an unparalleled exalt from 10,000 years ago, his cultivation method and martial Tao were completely different from mine. I can use some of his cultivation experience as a reference and learn from him, but condensing the Dharma eyes of the divine soul is something that I can only fumble about on my own. Having found the source of his failure, Ji Tianxing abandoned the Eastern Mountain Exalt's cultivation experience and began to fumble and comprehend on his own. He possessed the lightning spirit eyes and had cultivated the pure heart Dharma eye before. He had his own comprehension and thoughts on condensing the Dharma eyes of the divine soul. Following his own thoughts, he continued to attempt to condense the Dharma eyes of the divine soul. This way it was indeed effective. He had only cultivated for around 4 days and had already touched the threshold of the Dharma eyes of the divine soul, condensing its embryonic form. Even though his Dharma eyes of the divine soul looked a little awkward, just like an oval-shaped Dharma eye. But this was the first step to success. He persevered and continued to condense it, only wanting to succeed in condensing the Dharma eyes of the divine soul as soon as possible. Unknowingly, another 10 days passed. His Dharma eyes of the divine soul had already been condensed by more than half, becoming solid. It was only now that he discovered that his Dharma eyes of the divine soul were becoming more and more strange, actually becoming even more oval and narrow. Half a month later, he finally succeeded in condensing the Dharma eyes of the divine soul. However, when he saw the appearance of the Dharma eyes of the divine soul, he was stunned on the spot. Why is my Dharma eyes of the divine soul like this? It's actually not a Dharma eye but a sword. That's right, his Dharma eyes of the divine soul was not a white eyeball, but a blazing white sword of light that was 3 feet long. This sword of light was condensed from the power of the divine soul. It was blazing white and dazzling all over, containing an incomparably sharp might. Ji Tianxing controlled the blazing white sword of light to fly before him, carefully sizing it up as he murmured with a rather strange expression. Looks like the sword soul Tao that I cultivate has determined that I am unable to condense the Dharma eyes of the divine soul, and can only condense the Dharma sword of the divine soul. He attempted to control the Dharma sword of the divine soul, speeding through the skies. Swish, swish, swish. The speed of the Dharma sword of the divine soul was as fast as the aurora, graceful and graceful. It flickered and flashed through the skies, leaving streaks of white marks in the sky. After repeated trials and experiments, Ji Tianxing finally confirmed that this Dharma sword of the divine soul had all the functions of the Dharma eyes of the divine soul. He could control the Dharma sword of the divine soul, and freely use sword techniques within a radius of 10 miles to assassinate his enemies. Moreover, the Dharma sword of the divine soul could also release the power of the divine soul to monitor a radius of 10 miles. Ji Tianxing was satisfied as he withdrew the Dharma sword of the divine soul. The Dharma sword of the divine soul floated in the air behind him, flashing with white light and accumulating a soaring sword intent. All the soul-tempering powerhouses in the world have condensed the Dharma eyes of the divine soul. Only I have condensed the Dharma sword of the divine soul. In this way I can be considered a unique soul-tempering powerhouse in the world. Right now I am only at the first level of the soul-tempering realm and can only condense one Dharma sword of the divine soul. If I reach the 9th level of the soul-tempering realm and condense 9 Dharma swords of the divine soul, how powerful would I be? Using the soul to control the sword, no one can rival me. With 9 swords of the divine soul I can destroy the heavens and earth. Thinking of this, a strong sense of anticipation and yearning grew in his heart. The voice of the burial of heaven also sounded in his mind. It said in a gratified tone, "Tianxing, you have inherited Kenshin's legacy. Your martial Tao is different and is destined to be unique. Others condense the divine soul, but you condense the sword soul. Others condense the Dharma eyes of the divine soul, but you condense the Dharma sword of the divine soul. Your special talent and unparalleled sword Tao will allow you to have the combat strength to crush powerhouses of the same realm. Now you can leave the sinkhole and head to the northern desert to carry out your plan." After hearing the words of the burial of heaven, Ji Tianxing nodded. Chapter 1035. With the soul magic sword, Ji Tianxing could travel at a much faster speed. If he used his wings to fly, it would take him about 2 months to leave the East Sea and reach the border of the northern desert. But with the soul magic sword he would only need half a month to reach the border. Of course, the flying speed of the soul magic sword was much slower than that of the sword soul. But the sword soul was the source of his soul and power. It could only be used for a short period of time to escape or chase after enemies. It could not be used for traveling. The soul magic sword was the most suitable for traveling. He stepped on the 3-meter-long soul magic sword and turned into a dazzling white light as he flew across the sky at lightning speed. In just 2 days he left the East Sea and the bottomless abyss. During this time he encountered many demons and giant beasts in the soul-tempering realm and was surrounded and attacked many times. But he did not care about those demons and sea beasts. He rode the soul magic sword and flew away in a carefree manner. No matter how strong those demons and giant beasts were, they could not catch up with him. They could only watch him leave. He was not in any danger along the way. After flying for half a month he finally reached the border between the East Sea and the northern desert. It was noon and the sun was shining brightly. In the azure blue sea the waves surged and glowed with golden light. 300 miles ahead, there was a dark horizon at the end of the sky. That was the border of the northern desert. Ji Tianxing slowed down his flying speed and stopped in the sky above the vast sea. He frowned and looked down at the scene below. There was an island in the sea below. The island was hundreds of miles wide and was covered with green grass and forests. There were also tens of thousands of soldiers from the water tribe stationed there. A powerful defensive formation protected the entire island. There were 2 camps on the island. There were thousands of military tents in the camp. Banners were flying around the camp. The atmosphere was solemn and stern. At this moment teams of soldiers from the water tribe rushed out of the sea and landed on the island. They carried many severely injured water tribe members. After landing on the island, they rushed to the camp as fast as the wind. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing frowned and a look of confusion flashed across his eyes. The army of the water tribe is not hiding in the depths of the sea. Why are they stationed on this island? From the looks of it they seem to be fighting a great battle. His sharp eyes scanned the surroundings, using his divine soul power to detect the movements in the sea. Soon he discovered that the seemingly vast blue sea was mixed with a large amount of blood. In addition to the salty smell of seawater, there was also the smell of blood in the air. There really is a war. Ji Tianxing immediately had an answer. He mumbled to himself. Tai said that something big had happened at the East Sea border and that he had to come personally to oversee the situation. At that time I asked him if it had anything to do with the demons, but he didn't answer. Now it seems that this matter definitely has something to do with the demon race. At this moment he saw huge waves suddenly surging on the surface of the sea 50 miles ahead of him, and a dull rumbling sound could be heard. The surging and churning waves were mixed with light red blood and contained a violent origin energy aura. Ji Tianxing knew at a glance that there must be people fighting at the bottom of the sea to cause such a commotion. He hurriedly flew to the surface of the sea and released his divine soul power into the vast sea to investigate the situation at the bottom of the sea. This place was near the border between the East Sea and the northern desert. It was a shallow sea area and the sea was only 1,000 meters deep. His divine soul power reached the bottom of the sea and immediately saw the situation at the bottom of the sea. As he expected, there were hundreds of people fighting fiercely at the bottom of the sea in the dim light. One group of people was the water tribe soldiers. They were all shrimp soldiers and crab generals holding swords, spears, swords and halberds. They were only in the mystic comprehending realm and there were more than 300 of them. The other group of people were all 3 meters tall, and their bodies were completely black and purple. They looked ferocious and ferocious. Although there were only about 100 of them, they were all wearing armor and holding spears and large swords. They ferociously charged at the formation of the water tribe soldiers. Logically speaking, the bottom of the sea was the main battlefield of the water tribe soldiers. They had the advantage in numbers and should be able to defeat the demon soldiers. However, the reality was the exact opposite. Those demon soldiers were incomparably ferocious. They crazily charged and broke the formation of the water tribe soldiers. The water tribe soldiers retreated pathetically. In a short span of a dozen breaths, more than 30 water tribe soldiers were slaughtered by the demon soldiers. Their corpses were chopped into pieces and blood gushed out. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing instantly frowned and was even more puzzled. As expected, the demon race has invaded the East Sea and is attacking the water tribe. For thousands of years, the demon race has been wreaking havoc on the continent, harming both the human and demon races. However, the demon race has never invaded the East Sea. They have always minded their own business with the water tribe. Why would the demon race suddenly attack the water tribe? Also, aren't the demon race not good in water and unable to enter the East Sea? These demon soldiers are moving and fighting at the bottom of the sea, but they are not affected at all. This is too strange. He vaguely felt that the demon race's attack on the water tribe this time was not simple. There must be something else going on. He released his divine soul magic sword and flew to the sea area 10 miles away. He used his divine soul power to investigate the bottom of the sea. As a result, there were more than 4,000 demon race warriors attacking the 10,000-strong water tribe army at the bottom of the sea within 10 miles. Although the demon race and the water tribe were fighting separately, the situation of the dozen or so troops was basically the same. The water tribe soldiers were not a match for the demon race warriors at all. They were beaten back and had no power to resist. Soon only 6,000 or 7,000 of the water tribe soldiers were left. They were retreating back to the island in a panic. Ji Tianxing did not have time to think. He immediately controlled the divine soul magic sword and turned it into a 100-meter-long giant sword of white light, slashing at the demon race warriors. Divine soul magic sword slash. The giant sword of white light dove into the bottom of the sea and lit up with a dazzling white light, illuminating the seabed within a few thousand meters. Bang! With a dull sound, the giant sword of white light slashed at a demon race troop. More than 80 demon race warriors were killed on the spot. Dark purple demon blood mixed with pieces of flesh splattered on the bottom of the sea, creating huge waves that rushed to the surface of the sea. Ji Tianxing stood above the sea 10 miles away. He used his divine soul to control the divine soul magic sword and slashed at another demon race troop. Boom! With another dull sound, more than 100 demon race warriors were killed on the spot. They turned into pieces of flesh and blood that rolled in the sea. Ji Tianxing controlled the divine soul magic sword and slashed at one demon race troop after another. In a short 100 breaths, he stood motionless on the sea surface. But the divine soul magic sword had killed more than 2,000 demon race warriors. The surviving demon race warriors knew that they had encountered an expert. They were scared out of their wits. They retreated in panic. Chapter 1036. These demon soldiers were only at the mystic understanding realm, and their leader was only at the origin core realm. To Ji Tianxing, these demons were as weak as ants. With his current strength, controlling the spirit sword was like chopping vegetables. He could kill dozens or even hundreds of them with a single strike. After he killed more than 4,000 demons, the surviving water race soldiers were all terrified and fled to the island with all their might. Fush! On the northern shore of the island, countless water race soldiers rushed out of the sea in panic and jumped onto the island. For a moment, the surface of the sea stirred up as hundreds of water race soldiers emerged. But when they reached the shore, they immediately stopped. This was because Ji Tianxing was standing in the air above the shore, looking at them expressionlessly. His clothes fluttered in the wind, and his aura was divine and majestic. A blazing white spirit sword floated behind him and he gave off the aura of a transcendent. The water race soldiers looked at him in fear, not daring to act rashly. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Ji Tianxing saw an Origin Core Realm sea demon in the crowd and asked in a dignified voice, "Are you the leader of the water race soldiers?" The sea demon was covered in wounds and was very weak. Being stared at by Ji Tianxing, it was afraid and retreated. But seeing that Ji Tianxing had no ill intentions, it hesitated for a moment before walking out of the crowd and standing on a rock. It learned the etiquette of the humankind, bowed to Ji Tianxing and said respectfully, "Senior, thank you so much for saving our lives just now. Because of you, so many of us brothers we managed to escape. May I ask why Senior has stopped us?" Ji Tianxing said in a low voice, "I am Ji Tianxing, a friend of your Prince Tai. Where's Tai? Take me to him." His words were short and powerful, making the hundreds of water-kind warriors in awe. Meanwhile, they sighed in relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Unfortunately, they had always been stationed at the border and were not in the imperial court. They had never heard of Ji Tianxing defeating Tai. The water tribe commander came back to his senses and pointed to the sea 50 kilometers to the north, saying sternly, "Sir Ji Tianxing, His Highness the Prince is personally leading an army and fighting a bloody battle to resist the invasion of the demon race army. The demon race's army is coming in a menacing manner. There are many powerhouses in charge. You are His Highness' friend. Please go and help His Highness." Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said with a solemn expression, "I understand." Quickly returned to the island to recuperate. With that, he stepped onto his soul magic sword and turned into a white streak of light, flying towards the northern border. After flying 100 miles away, he saw a dozen powerhouses fighting in the air above the sea in front of him. A dark golden dragon led a black dragon that was 1,000 meters long and 5 sea demons that were as large as mountains. They were fending off the fierce attacks of 8 demon powerhouses. The 8 demon powerhouses were led by 2 soul refinement realm powerhouses. The other 6 were around Sky Origin Realm level 8. The strongest was a giant blood-red demon that was as large as a mountain and looked like a bat. This giant demon had a pair of blood-red bone wings. Its arms, legs, and spine were covered in sharp black barbs. It had a pair of claws that were as sharp as knives. Its face was ferocious, and there were traces of dark red blood in its bloody mouth. Most importantly, this blood azure's strength had reached the 4th level of the soul refining stage. Ji Tianxing recognized that this person's appearance and strength was very similar to Blood Shura, who was ranked 4th among the 6 demon marshals. It pounced on the black flood dragon in a frenzy, brandishing its sharp claws and unleashing countless blood-red blades, forcing the black flood dragon to retreat. The black dragon was Tai's guard, Long Yuan. Its strength was on par with Blood Shura. The two of them fought fiercely in the air. Their figures flashed back and forth, causing fierce winds and towering waves. The other soul refinement realm powerhouse was like a giant bear that was 100 meters tall. It had 4 black wings and 3 eyes. This black-winged giant demon was at soul refinement realm level 2. Its target was Golden Dragon Tai. It desperately used a demonic secret technique, releasing black demonic fog that covered the sky. It gathered phantoms of ghosts and giant demons to attack Tai with all its might. Tai stubbornly held on, resisting the black-winged giant demon's ferocious attacks. He used all his strength to contend with it. Surprisingly, Tai had broken through to Soul Refinement Realm and reached Soul Refinement Realm level 1. Unfortunately, he hadn't condensed his Divine Soul Dharma Eye yet. His combat strength was still lacking. He used all his strength but could only suppress the black-winged giant demon. He couldn't kill it. Other than these 4 Soul Refinement Realm powerhouses, the other 11 Sky Origin Realm sea beasts and giant demons were also fighting fiercely in the air above the sea, causing towering waves. The area within a radius of 100 miles was their battlefield. Violent shockwaves bombarded the sea, creating giant whirlpools on the surface of the sea. Ji Tianxing arrived at the battlefield. After seeing the situation clearly, he immediately controlled his Divine Soul Dharma sword and rushed towards several giant demons of Sky Origin Realm level 8 and level 9. Divine Soul Dharma sword, kill! He shouted and activated his Divine Soul power to control the Divine Soul Dharma sword. It turned into a giant sword of white light that was 100 meters long and slashed toward a giant demon. The Sky Origin Realm Level 8 giant demon was covered in wounds, but it was furious and frenzied. It attacked a sea beast with all its might. When it sensed the Divine Soul Dharma sword coming, it had no time to dodge and was hit by the sword. Boom! With a muffled sound, the giant demon that was as large as a mountain was cut into dozens of pieces by the Divine Soul Dharma sword. It turned into pieces and blood that fell into the sea below. It was only a Sky Origin Realm cultivator, not a soul tempering stage cultivator. It died when its physical body was destroyed. Tianxing killed a giant demon in one hit and then controlled the Divine Soul Dharma sword to stab another giant demon not far away. When the giant devil heard the muffled sound and saw his comrade being killed in a single strike, his eyes were filled with shock. Seeing the giant sword of white light coming toward it, it was scared out of its wits. It turned around and ran toward the shore. However, the Divine Soul Dharma sword was as fast as lightning. How could it dodge it? Boom! With a muffled sound, the giant demon followed its comrade's footsteps. Its head was smashed into pieces by the Divine Soul Dharma sword. Blood splashed everywhere. The giant demon's body fell from the sky and crashed into the sea. Tianxing had killed 2 Sky Origin Realm Level 8 giant demons within 2 breaths of time since he showed up. These 2 trolls were elite demon generals, valiant generals who commanded tens of thousands of demon warriors. However, under Tianxing's Divine Soul Dharma sword, they were as fragile as paper. The sudden change of events shocked everyone on the battlefield. Chapter 1037. Tianxing? Why are you here? Golden Dragon Tai turned to look at Tianxing, his eyes filled with shock. It's only been 2 months, and young Master Ji has broken through to the spirit refining realm? Long Yuan also stared at Tianxing, his eyes filled with shock. Blood Shura's body surged with blood-red flames as he stared at Tianxing with bloodshot eyes. He narrowed his eyes and murmured, Tianxing. So he's Tianxing? The human reptile who killed Marshal Zhua and Tu Ren. Who would have thought that Benshui would meet him here? This is God's will. Today Benshui will tear him to pieces, extract his soul and bloodline, and offer them to His Majesty the Demon King. Blood Shura gritted his teeth, his voice cold and filled with hatred, filled with blood-red murderous intent. The other dozen sea beasts and demon cultivators gradually stopped fighting and stared at Tianxing. Suddenly, the sea within 100 miles calmed down, and the deafening sounds that reverberated in the sky gradually disappeared. Tianxing became the center of attention, enduring everyone's hateful and respectful gazes. Golden Dragon Tai temporarily abandoned the black-winged great demon and flew to Tianxing's side in a flash of golden light. He asked, "Young Master Ji, how did you find this place?" Tianxing shook his head and calmly said, "I didn't come here on purpose. I was just passing by and happened to see the demon army invading." Tai, didn't the demon race coexist peacefully with the water tribe? Didn't they not invade the East Sea for thousands of years? Why did the demon race suddenly invade the East Sea and fight at the bottom of the sea? Tai frowned slightly and said in a low voice, "Young Master Ji, now is not the time to talk about this. Let me take care of those demons first, then I'll explain it to you later." Tianxing sized him up, then looked at the wounded Long Yuan. He pointed at Blood Shura and said, "If I'm not wrong, that guy should be Demon Commander Blood Shura. Tai, with your and Long Yuan's strength, I'm afraid you can only fight it to a draw. You can't do anything to it, can you?" Tai pursed his lips. His expression was resolute, and his eyes were filled with determination and unyielding will. But he didn't say anything, which meant that he agreed with Tianxing's words. Tianxing stared coldly at Blood Shura and said in a cold voice, "I have an irreconcilable blood feud with the devil race. I once swore to kill all the devil race in the world. Since I've met you today, I definitely won't let you leave alive. Blood Shura, your time of death has come." As he spoke, he stepped onto his spirit magic sword and flew towards Blood Azura at the speed of light. Tai looked at Ji Yunshu's back with a complicated expression. He said in a low voice, "Young Master Ji, be careful. Blood Shura's strength is extraordinary." Tianxing didn't answer. In the blink of an eye, he was 1,000 meters away from Blood Shura. He stood still in the air. Blood Shura glared at Ji Yunshu with his blood-red eyes. He sneered and said, "When Benshui was in the northern desert, I heard that there was a little worm of the human race called Tianxing. He was arrogant and he always went against my race. Shui was blessed by the heavens. Shui met you here. Ji Tianxing, Shui will kill you. I'll grind your bones to dust and extract your soul. I'll let you have a taste of the agony of having your soul devoured by thousands of demons. Ji Tianxing didn't care about it. He looked calmly at the black serpent and said, Longyun, leave blood Shura to me. You go help Tai deal with the other demons. Young Master Ji, this is too dangerous. Long Yuan hesitated. His eyes were filled with worry. Although he was worried about Tai's safety, he refused to back down and let Ji Tianxing's life be in danger. Ji Tianxing looked at him with determined eyes. Long Yuan, he said solemnly, I hope that when I kill blood Shura, you and Tai can deal with the other demons. Don't disappoint me. His voice wasn't loud, but it was filled with unquestionable confidence and dominance. Long Yuan had a strange look in his eyes at once. He nodded in admiration and roared heroically, Good. Young Master Ji, let's have a competition. After that he looked deeply at Ji Tianxing. Then he turned and flew toward Tai. He wanted to help Tai kill the black-winged great demon. Ji Tianxing's confident words enraged blood Shura. He almost lost his mind. His whole body trembled. His eyes were filled with endless rage. Ji Tianxing, he roared in a low, hoarse voice. You're just a lowly insect that doesn't know what's good for you. This marshal will now let you know the consequences of being arrogant and conceited. Shui will tear you apart. Blood Shura roared. He flapped his blood-red wings wildly, releasing thousands of blood-red blades. They shot toward Ji Tianxing like a rain of arrows. Each blood-red light blade was 100 meters long. Thousands of blood-red light blades shot toward Ji Tianxing at the same time, shrouding the sky within a radius of 10 miles and drowning Ji Tianxing. Suddenly the sky turned into a blood-red purgatory. Half of the sky was dyed red. The air was filled with the pungent smell of blood. It was nauseating. Ji Tianxing, on the other hand, was fearless. His expression was calm and collected as he stared at the bloody blade that was coming at him. Suddenly his figure moved. Sword Soul Battle Tactics. He finally used his self-created Sword Soul Battle Tactics. His body turned into a golden flowing light and rushed toward the dense swarm of blood-red blades. To everyone's disbelief, he passed through the swarm of blood-red blades. His body flashed more than 20 times, evading countless attacks. Swoosh. In a breath's time he passed through the swarm of blood-red blades unscathed and rushed to blood Shura. The thousands of blood-red blades missed their target and crashed into the blue sea. Bang 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 bang. Muffled sounds rang out one after another. The surface of the sea was cut into countless gullies, so deep that the bottom of the sea could be seen. Huge waves of thousands of feet high rose into the air. Violent energy swept through the world. Blood Shura was dumbfounded. He stared at Ji Tianxing dumbfounded. His eyes were filled with horror. He could not believe that Ji Tianxing had used such a method to evade his ultimate killing move. At the same time, Ji Tianxing shouted with a cold face. Sky-burning palm. He abruptly raised his left arm and unleashed a gigantic flaming palm that blotted out the sky. Bang! Just as blood Shura came to his senses, he was sent flying by the huge flaming palm. He was covered in red flames. He flew backward for more than 10 miles before he managed to stop himself. However, he had just stabilized himself. Before he could counterattack, another huge sword of white light came at him. Sword of Soul Technique cut. Following that was Ji Tianxing's thunderous roar. Blood Shura saw the huge sword of white light in front of him. He felt the sword essence and power that could split heaven and earth. He was instantly horrified. No. He let out a shrill and terrified roar. Bang. Chapter 1038. Amidst the deafening noise, the dazzling white light engulfed blood Shura's figure. Its body, which was as large as a mountain and as dark red as blood, was immediately split in half by Ji Tianxing's soul magic sword. Swoosh. The broken corpses flew to both sides of the sky, sprinkling a dark red rain of blood that covered the sky and covered the sun. Everyone watched in horror as the two halves of blood Shura's body fell from the sky into the sea. Splash. A muffled boom burst out, and a huge wave that was hundreds of feet high was stirred up on the ocean surface. From the bloody body, a ball of dazzling spiritual light flew out with a whoosh and headed for the land in the north. It was blood Shura's spiritual soul. He was terrified and had lost all will to fight. All he wanted was to escape the East Sea and return to the land of the northern desert. The harsh words it had said earlier were now completely forgotten. Although it was humiliating, he couldn't care less about anything else. His life was more important. However, Ji Tianqing was determined to kill him. How could he let him escape alive? Kill! Ji Tianqing roared again, his voice reverberating in the air above the sea. The spiritual sword turned into a dazzling white light. It crossed 5 miles in an instant and hit Blood Shura's spiritual soul. Bang! Blood Shura didn't have the chance or strength to dodge. The ball of spiritual light exploded into a dozen pieces and splashed in all directions. A soul refinement realm powerhouse of his generation, the dignified demon commander Blood Azura, was killed by Ji Tianqing just like that. From the beginning of the battle until now, Ji Tianqing had only used 3 moves. 3 breaths of time. No one could have imagined that his battle prowess was actually formidable to such an extent. It was simply shocking. Blood Shura, a LV4 soul refining realm martial artist, was killed by him in 3 moves. Just how powerful was his true battle prowess? Tai Long Yuan, the black-winged great demon, the sea beasts and the demon clan experts were all stunned. The muffled rumbling sound was still echoing in the sky. The sea was still surging with huge waves, and the smell of blood in the air had yet to dissipate. However, the dozen or so experts present were completely silent. They were completely silent and couldn't even utter a single word. A moment later, Tai and Long Yuan came back to their senses and cheered excitedly. Oh my god! Young Master Ji had killed Blood Azura in 3 moves. In the short span of 2 months, not only has he broken through to the soul refinement realm, his combat prowess has actually reached such a terrifying level. It's too inconceivable. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, who would dare to believe it? This was simply a legend. Could it be that young Master Ji is so confident that he wants to compete with us to see who can finish off their opponents faster? Who would have thought that young Master Ji would be able to kill Blood Shura before His Highness, and I could even kill a single demon? How could they compete? They didn't even give us a chance. Tai and Long Yuan were not the only ones who were excited. The other 5 water race experts were shocked and excited as well. They looked at Ji Tianqing in awe. The 5 demon clan experts who were lucky enough to survive finally came back to their senses. They didn't dare to attack anymore. They didn't even care about the demon army at the bottom of the sea. They turned and ran for their lives. They could throw away their dignity and face. They couldn't care less about the Demon King's orders and the great plan to attack the Eastern Sea. At this moment, the only thing they needed to do was to stay alive. They only wanted to escape the Eastern Sea and get away from Ji Tianqing. They wanted to escape back to the northern desert continent. However, Tai Long Yuan and the others came back to their senses. They immediately used their ultimate killer moves and began to pursue. Long Yuan personally went after the black-winged great demon of the 2nd-level soul refinement realm. Tai and the other sea beasts went after the other 4 demon generals. The 2 sides began to chase and kill in the air above the sea. Ji Tianqing also took action personally. He controlled the astral projection sword to chase after the demons. In just a short span of 20 breaths, 4 of the 5 demons had been killed before they could escape the Eastern Sea. The last black-winged great demon was severely injured by Long Yuan. But it relied on its soul refinement realm strength to escape using the demon Dao's secret technique. The black-winged great demon was about to escape the Eastern Sea and return to the land. At this critical moment, Ji Tianqing finally arrived. He controlled the astral projection sword to hit it from 10 miles away. Boom! With a loud noise, the black-winged great demon's body was cut into pieces. Mixed with black blood, they fell from the sky into the sea. Its astral projection light dived into the sea, trying to escape from the bottom of the sea to the shore. But it couldn't hide from Ji Tianqing at all. An even more violent power erupted from the divine soul magic sword as it slashed into the sea, cleaving through the waves and slamming into the ball of divine soul light. Crack! With a crisp cracking sound, the astral projection light of the black-winged great demon was also shattered. It turned into a dozen pieces of light and fell to the bottom of the sea. The overlords and leaders of the demon army were all killed. The more than 20,000 demon warriors who were attacking at the bottom of the sea had also lost their commander and spiritual support. They had completely lost their fighting spirit and fighting spirit. Like a tray of loose sand, they quickly ran away. Tai Long Yuan and the others led the army of the sea tribe to launch a counterattack. They pursued the demon warriors at the bottom of the sea for 200 miles, all the way to the shore. In the end, more than 80% of the 20,000 demon warriors were killed. Only 3,000 or 4,000 of them escaped the eastern sea and returned to the land of the northern desert. The battle was over. Long Yuan and the sea beast generals were busy cleaning up the battlefield and cleaning up the aftermath. They were busy at the bottom of the sea. Tai took Ji Tianxing and returned to the island 300 miles away from the shore. The two landed at the center of the island outside a large tent. This tent belonged to the commander-in-chief Tai, who was also the most heavily guarded. When the two landed, the hundreds of guards outside the tent all knelt down and saluted. Tai waved his hand, indicating for the guards to leave. Then he led Ji Tianxing into the tent. The two entered the study to talk. After the two sat down, they each picked up a cup of spirit tea and chatted as they sipped. Tai looked at Ji Tianxing with shining eyes. His expression was somewhat excited as he asked in an envious tone, "Young Master Ji, it's only been 2 months since we last met. Not only have you broken through to the spirit-refining realm, but your battle prowess has also soared to such a level. This is simply shocking. If this lord's guess is correct, you must have encountered some sort of fortuitous encounter in the Eastern Sea's returning ruins, correct?" Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded. "That's right. Although the Eastern Sea's returning ruins is dangerous, it also contains great opportunities. Let's not talk about this for now. Hurry and tell me just what happened. Why have the demons become so strange? Not only have they attacked the Eastern Sea, but they can also dive to the bottom of the sea to fight. This is simply too shocking." Tai's expression turned grave at the mention of this question. After a moment of silence, he said in a solemn tone, "Young Master Ji, to tell you the truth, the demons have indeed undergone a great change. For thousands of years, an invisible chain has been on their bodies, shackling them." Chapter 1039. The shackles of the demon race have been removed? Ji Tianxing furrowed his brows and his expression became grave and gloomy. He was well aware that the shackles of the demon race referred to the bloodline curse. In the ancient legends, the goddess of jade light had sacrificed her life and divine spark to plant an eternal and indestructible curse on the demon race. As the demon race grew stronger, their bodies would undergo drastic changes. They would gradually become ugly and savage, as large as mountains. Every night of the full moon, when the 7 stars competed for glory, they would uncontrollably reveal their true forms and suffer great pain and torment. Their mutated bodies would limit their talent and growth, bringing them all sorts of inconveniences. Precisely because of this, the demon race was not good at swimming. Ordinary demons could not enter the Eastern Sea. For several thousand years, the demon race had shown no interest in the Eastern Sea and had never launched a large-scale invasion. But now, Unity Supreme was telling him that the shackles of the demon race had been removed. This was a bolt from the blue. Ji Tianxing stared at Unity Supreme, his voice solemn and low as he asked, "Unity Supreme, is this true? The shackles of the demon race supposedly originated from the ancient era, a curse of the gods. Ever since the ancient era ended, there have been no more gods in this world. How could the demon race have suddenly removed the power of the curse?" Unity Supreme was a prince of the imperial court of the water race. Since childhood he had read many books and seen many things. Of course he knew about the ancient legends and the curse. He nodded gravely. This lord knows that this news is very shocking and inconceivable. In truth, this lord also did not dare to believe that this was true. But this lord had to observe and research for more than a month to confirm this point. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly, agreeing with his point of view. He motioned for him to continue. Unity Supreme sighed and said worriedly, "The demon race armies attacking the Eastern Sea have all mutated and their shackles have been removed. In the past, profound understanding realm demons like them could not dive into the sea at all. Once they entered the sea, they would find it difficult to move. Those origin core realm demon commanders could only dive into the sea for short periods of time. They could not fight at the bottom of the sea. However, you have also seen the current situation. The devil race army is completely unafraid of the deep sea. They can dive into the sea as if they are walking on flat ground and use their martial arts moves normally. Through my observations, I also discovered that after the shackles of the devil race were removed, not only did they become stronger, but their growth rate also doubled. For thousands of years, the demon race has been restricted by the curse of the gods. so they can't invade the Eastern Sea. That's why they have never fought with the water race. Now that they've lost their shackles, they've decided to attack us. After all, the northern desert was too cold and barren. The Eastern Sea and the northern desert bordered each other, and the seabed contained an abundance of cultivation resources, which was what the demon race desired the most. Since the war broke out in the past few months, the demon army has been divided into several armies to invade the East Sea, massacring aquatic creatures and plundering mineral resources. Tai was still recounting what had happened in the past few months. He was extremely worried about this, and he also hated the demons. Ji Tianxing gradually became absent-minded. Many thoughts appeared in his mind and a bold conjecture emerged. For thousands of years, the demons have been unable to dispel the power of the curse. They have been shackled and shackled. As a result, the demons' growth has been restricted. They have been unable to grow to their peak, much less defeat the other races and unify the entire continent. But now the devil race's curse has been removed. They will become the most powerful race on this continent. They will definitely go on a crusade, massacring and plundering resources. They will rise rapidly in a very short period of time. Just what was the reason that allowed them to dispel the bloodline curse? Could this have something to do with Yao Yao? Ji Tianxing's heart was filled with worry and anxiety. He wanted nothing more than to rush to the northern desert immediately and rescue Yun Yao. Tai saw that his expression was strange and asked with concern, "Young Master Ji, what's wrong?" "It's nothing." Ji Tianxing came back to his senses and waved his hand. He said calmly, "When I first entered the monarch residence, Divine Master Blackfeather gathered all the princes to discuss a plan to deal with the Demon King. I remember that the princes of both the human and Yao races agreed to attack the devil race and take the opportunity to kill the Demon King and eliminate all future troubles. Only the water race did not agree and watched coldly from the sidelines." Hearing Ji Tianxing bring up the past, Tai Yi felt a little awkward. He lowered his head slightly and avoided Ji Tianxing's gaze. He didn't dare to look Ji Tianxing in the eye. After a moment of silence, he nodded and said, "That's right. I did say those words back then, which disappointed the princes of both the human and Yao races. But the water race and the devil race have always minded our own business. Our ancestors also warned our descendants not to provoke the devil race to avoid bringing destruction to the water race. But who would have thought that the devil race would suddenly remove their shackles and become enemies with all the races in the world? The water race of the Eastern Sea would be the first to bear the brunt." Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said in a serious tone, "The devil race has already invaded the Eastern Sea on a large scale. I believe that the imperial court of the water race will no longer follow any ancestral teachings and will not tolerate it any longer. Work hard, lead your people and warriors of the water clan to resist the invasion of the demon army, and defend your East Sea. The devil race has no allies and will become enemies with all the races in the world. In the end, they will be destroyed by all the races. However, the matter of the races working together to destroy the devil race still needs to be discussed with the imperial court of the various races. I'm afraid it will be a long time before it can be carried out. Before that, the water race of the Eastern Sea must hold on. Do not fall under the iron hooves of the devil race." After that, Ji Tianxing patted Tai's shoulder and got up to leave. Tai hurriedly stood up and asked, "Young Master Ji, where are you going?" "You already know the answer." Ji Tianxing stopped but did not turn around. Tai frowned and said in a serious tone, "Are you really going to enter the northern desert and rescue Yun Yao from the devil race's nest?" Ji Tianxing said seriously, "Of course it's true. When have I ever lied?" Tai sighed and said, "Although you have broken through to the spirit refinement realm and are very powerful, the northern desert is a harsh environment. The devil race is cruel and cunning. You must be careful. This lord sincerely hopes that you can come back alive. The next time I return to the imperial court, I will be able to see you again. Don't worry, this lord will not lose to you. I will definitely sharpen myself in this war and quickly increase my strength." Only then did Ji Tianxing turn around and look at him with a smile on his face. With a solemn tone he said, "Very good. I will give you a chance to challenge me, but only once. When you feel that you're strong enough, feel free to challenge me. I'm leaving, take care of yourself." After saying this, he turned and walked out of the study, leaving the main tent. Tai stood by the window and watched him fly into the sky. He left the island on his sword and flew towards the northern coast. Only when Ji Tianxing's figure disappeared over the horizon did he withdraw his gaze and sigh. Chapter 1040. Ji Tianxing stepped on the soul magic sword, flying across the sky as fast as lightning. Soon he arrived at the shore. The shore wasn't a beach but a patch of black reefs. Wave after wave of waves crashed against the reefs on the shore, splashing water everywhere. The shore, which was covered with reefs, was a mess. There were messy footprints, broken stones and many broken weapons and armors. These were the traces left by the demon soldiers when they were running away. Ji Tianxing flew over the shore and continued to fly to the land. After crossing the shore, he left the eastern sea and entered the territory of the northern desert demon clan. As far as his eyes could see, the land was desolate, full of murderous and bleak aura. The land was grayish-brown. The land was very barren. There was only barren soil and broken stones. There wasn't a trace of green. On the land of the northern desert there was almost no forest or grassland. No matter if it was spring, summer, autumn, winter, or day or night, the sky here was always gray. There was no warm sunlight or bright moon. This was the land of god punishment, abandoned by the gods. Except for the demon clan, no other race was willing to live and reproduce here. The gray sky, the barren and desolate land, and the increasingly cold air caused people to feel depressed and irritated for no reason. Ji Tianxing used his soul power to check the surroundings. He found that the heaven and earth aura that could be absorbed within dozens of miles was very thin. The mineral resources underground were also pitifully little. They could be ignored. No one would want to live in such a barren land. No wonder the demon clan swore to rush out of the northern desert and invade the territories of other races. Ji Tianxing frowned and sighed inwardly. Unknowingly he had flown 100 miles away. At this time he saw many mountains and many demon clan figures appear on the land 100 miles away. In the mountains 100 miles away, there was a black mist of demon chi that rose to the sky. One after another, demon squads patrolled the vicinity of the mountains on guard. There were also flocks of black demonic crows and flying birds circling around the mountain peak, monitoring the movements in the sky. Without a doubt that was the main camp of the demon army. Ji Tianxing descended from the sky and used a secret technique to conceal his aura as he quietly made his way towards the devil army camp. Although he could guess that there must be more than 10,000 demon warriors hiding in the demon camp, he didn't expect that there would be more than 10,000 demon warriors. However, he didn't put those ordinary devils in his eyes. With his current strength, only devil commanders could match him. Demon Commander Blood Shura should have been the commander of this army, but he had already been killed by him. There shouldn't be any powerhouses in the devil army that could threaten him now. However, he did not come to the northern desert to start a massacre and eradicate the demon army. If he wanted to rescue Yunyao, he had to do it secretly. He couldn't expose his whereabouts too early. Once the devil general and the devil emperor knew that he had come to the northern desert, they would definitely take action. At that time he would not be able to move around in the northern desert, and he would not be able to find Yunyao, let alone rescue her. Therefore he only approached the devil army camp to observe the situation. He didn't want to act rashly and alert the enemy. 15 minutes later he had evaded more than 10 patrolling teams of demons and dozens of hidden sentries. He hid in the devil army camp. Several towering mountains that were thousands of meters high had been hollowed out by the devil army. Inside the mountains were huge devil caves that led to the depths of the earth. More than 10,000 demon warriors were hiding in the devil caves in the mountains, recuperating and adjusting their breathing. The devil army camp was filled with a panicked and anxious atmosphere. The devil army soldiers that came and went all looked worried and angry. Obviously, the news that Demon Commander Blood Shura and several elite devil generals had been killed had reached the devil army camp. The devil army had lost their leader. Like a plate of loose sand, the devil army no longer had the will to fight and fight. Ji Tianxing quietly moved through the devil army camp. After investigating for an hour, he finally found the outside of a secret chamber. This secret chamber hidden in the devil cave was cold and gloomy, and filled with dense devil chi. The outside of the secret chamber was heavily guarded by hundreds of elite devil army guards. Ji Tianxing used the earth-burrowing technique to hide in the wall of the secret chamber, quietly investigating the situation inside. He saw that the gloomy secret chamber was lit with a dark red light. There were gemstone lamps in the corners of the room. 12 devil army experts were gathered in the secret chamber. They surrounded 2 devil army experts in the spirit refining realm and discussed military matters. The 2 devil army experts in the spirit refining realm. One was at the 2nd level of the spirit refining realm and the other was at the 1st level. Ji Tianxing hid in the dark and listened for a while. Only then did he realize that these 2 were the devil army's deputy commander and military advisor. The other 10 devil army experts were the elite devil generals of the devil army. A burly devil general stepped forward and bowed to the deputy commander and military advisor. Full of worry, he said, "Deputy Commander, military advisor, Lord Bloodshura has been killed by Ji Tianxing. Those elite devil generals have also died in the East Sea. Our army's vitality has been greatly damaged. Now the soldiers have lost their will to fight." The commanders who escaped reported to me that Ji Tianxing and the Prince of the Water Race, Tai, are friends. They have a close relationship. Now that Ji Tianxing has come, he will definitely help Tai with all his strength to resist our attack. Even Lord Bloodshura was not Ji Tianxing's match. Who among us can defeat him? For now, I think we should retreat decisively and let the soldiers rest. We cannot attack the East Sea anymore. The other devil generals nodded in agreement. Another devil general stepped forward and said to the deputy commander and military advisor, "My lords, if we continue to attack, we will only suffer more casualties. I think none of us can defeat Ji Tianxing. We must report this to the Heavenly Devil Palace and ask His Majesty the Devil Emperor to make a decision." The other devil general hurriedly nodded and said angrily, "Deputy Commander, please send the message back to the Heavenly Devil Palace and ask His Majesty to send a devil commander here. As long as the devil commander comes to the camp himself, he can easily kill Ji Tianxing and avenge Lord Bloodshura. By then we will come back and attack the East Sea. We will make the waterkind pay 10 times the price. All treasures and treasures of the waterkind will belong to us." The remaining demon generals also agreed with this person's words. The deputy commander and the military advisor glanced at each other. They talked for a while through telepathic communication and reached a consensus. "Good. I now order the entire army to retreat 800 li and return to Snow Dragon Mountain to let the soldiers rest and recuperate. Bun Shui will report this to the Heavenly Devil Palace and ask His Majesty the Devil Emperor to make a decision. However, in the meantime, we have to strengthen the defense and guard against the Waterkind army's counterattack. Most importantly, we have to keep an eye on Ji Tianxing in case he attacks our territory and breaks into our camp." Chapter 1041. The discussion between the generals, military counselors, and deputy generals soon ended. Ji Tianxing quietly burrowed into the ground and left the devil camp. Whether he entered or left the camp, he did not reveal his whereabouts and was not discovered by anyone. I didn't expect that these demon experts who have never seen me before would know of my name and deeds and be on guard against me. They want to report this to the Heavenly Devil Palace and let the ancient Devil Emperor make a decision. If the Devil Emperor knows that I am at the border of the East Sea helping Tai resist the demon army, will he lead his army? Or will he send Demon Commander Minji to the East Sea to deal with me? As Ji Tianxing hurried on his way, he silently calculated in his heart. Whether it's the Devil Emperor coming in person or Devil Marshal Dark Knight, I'm not their opponent right now. My whereabouts have been exposed and the demons are on guard against me. From now on, I must move more stealthily and not be discovered by the demons. Fortunately, I killed Bloodshura, and the demon army temporarily retreated and will not attack the East Sea. I hope the demons will focus on the Water Tribe, then I will have a chance to sneak into the Devil Emperor's lair and rescue Yao Yao. After making up his mind, he became more cautious. An hour later he was far away from the demon camp, crossed the Snow Dragon Mountain, and truly entered the northern desert. The Snow Dragon Mountain was a towering mountain range thousands of miles long, and it was also the pass between the East Sea and the northern desert. This barren black mountain range was made entirely of black-gray rocks. However, it was cold here and snowflakes fell from the sky all year round. The entire Snow Dragon Mountain was also covered in white snow, and it was a scene of silver and white. When Ji Tianxing crossed the Snow Dragon Mountain, he found that the inside of the mountain was filled with hundreds of demon caves of various sizes. Each demon cave could hide thousands of demons, and the caves were connected to each other. More than 30,000 demons were stationed to guard the line of defense of the Snow Dragon Mountain. The demon army was fully equipped, wearing black armor, holding sabers, spears, swords, and halberds, and exuding demon aura and killing intent. These demons were all experienced elites. They guarded the first line of defense between the northern desert and the eastern sea. Ji Tianxing sneaked into Snow Dragon Mountain and silently observed the situation inside Snow Dragon Mountain. He drew a map of the Devil Race's army and put it in his interspatial ring. The reason why he wanted to remember this was to prepare for the attack on the northern desert in the future. He believed that many years later, all the races would unite and fight against the Devil Race of the northern desert. By then he would give the map to Tai, and it would definitely help the army of the aquatic race break Snow Dragon Mountain and march into the northern desert. After leaving the Snow Dragon Mountain, Ji Tianxing continued to fly north, hurrying to the hinterland of the northern desert. The deeper they went into the northern desert, the darker and gloomier the sky became. Heavy snowflakes floated in the sky, and the ground was covered in silver. There were snow mountains and snowfields everywhere. The temperature here was extremely low. Ordinary flowers and trees could not survive here at all. They would be frozen into ice dregs. Even the soil on the ground had been frozen for thousands of years and was as hard as steel. Ji Tianxing flew for more than 1,000 li, but he did not see any more villages or towns where the Devil Race gathered. Before coming to the northern desert, he had made preparations in advance. He learned a few simple Devil Race languages and understood the customs of the Devil Race. He knew that the Devil Race was not like the other races, who divided their regions by villages, cities, and kingdoms. The Devil Race divided their forces by races and divided their regions by tribes. In the eyes of all the races in the world, the Devil Race was the same. They were ugly, savage, and cunning. But in reality, the Devil Race of the northern desert was roughly divided into 3 races: the Blood Devil Race, the Darkness Devil Race, and the Azura Devil Race. The 3 races all cultivated the secret techniques of the Devil Path that had been passed down since ancient times. They all had different talents and secret techniques. The Blood Devil Race was most skilled in using the secret techniques of the Blood Devil Race. When they used their ultimate techniques, they would create a sea of blood that would cover the sky and cover the sun. The techniques they cultivated and the methods they used to increase their strength were also extremely evil and cruel. They used the blood of all living beings as the source of their power. The Darkness Devil Race was most skilled in using the power of darkness. Their bodies were shrouded in black mist and devil chi, and they could display a bone-chilling power that contained the cold energy of death. As for the Azura Devil Race, they were most skilled in close combat and combat. They inherited the characteristics of the legendary Azura. They were born with immense strength and extremely tough bodies. They had strong defense and strength, extraordinary speed and combat skills. They were killing machines on the battlefield. Of course, the 3 races were nominally ruled by the Heavenly Devil Palace, and they had to respect the ancient Devil Emperor as the Emperor. Moreover, the 3 races lived together in a messy manner. They were scattered among the various tribes and regions of the northern desert. There were thousands of Devil Race tribes of various sizes in the northern desert. The smaller Devil Race tribes might only have a few thousand people, while the more powerful tribes had tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of people. The larger Devil Race tribes usually had hundreds of thousands of people. There were only a few tribes in the northern desert that had more than 1 million people. They were the most elite tribes. In the process of Ji Tianxing hurrying along, he constantly encountered one Devil Race tribe after another. However, after flying for about 3 days, he was still in the outer regions of the northern desert. He had not entered the inner regions of the northern desert. The tribes he had encountered were scattered across the land of ice and snow. They were all small and weak tribes. In those small tribes, most of the Devil Race members were at the mystic enlightening realm. The elites in the tribes were at the primordial core realm. Only people like the chiefs and priests of the tribes were at the heavenly origin realm. When Ji Tianxing passed by those tribes, he stopped to observe them. He hid in the dark and observed the Devil Race's living habits. He learned the authentic Devil Race language and learned more about their habits and customs. He knew that knowing oneself and the enemy was the key to victory. He traveled alone in the northern desert. It was very difficult to cross hundreds of millions of miles of land and hundreds of Devil Race tribes to reach the Devil Emperor's lair. Especially when he had to hide his tracks and aura. He could not be discovered by the Devil Race. This was even more difficult. After serious consideration, he decided to learn and imitate the Devil Race. He disguised himself as a devil. Only in this way could he travel the northern desert, find the heavenly devil palace and rescue his wife, Yunyao. He hid in a small tribe of about 5,000 people and secretly observed and learned for 5 days. With his extraordinary talent and intelligence, he finally learned the devil race's common language and understood most of the devil race's customs and habits. On the night of the 5th day, he secretly killed a primordial core devil race youth. Then, under the guidance of the burial of heaven, he used the puppet's secret art and attached his soul to the corpse of the devil race youth. Chapter 1042. That night, the north wind was blowing and snow was falling. Zhou Xian took advantage of the night to leave the demon tribe. He flew across the sky and continued to fly towards the hinterland of the northern desert. At this time he had turned into a 20-year-old demon tribe youth. He was more than 10 feet tall and wore black armor. He carried a black heavy sword that was as wide as a bench on his back. His whole body was emitting demon chi and killing intent. He had a new identity. He was the #1 genius of the Ula tribe Oolong. Other than his divine soul, his body, flesh and hair were completely of the demon tribe. Even if a spirit-refining realm demon commander came, he might not be able to find any clues or flaws. Of course, he used his divine soul to take over Oolong's body. His own body was sleeping in the world inside the sword. While flying, he was communicating with Burial of Heaven using his divine soul. Buried Heaven, the puppet secret method that you've taught me is simply too amazing. Now that I'm disguised as a demon, I can definitely go through the northern desert unhindered. I'll soon reach the demon emperor's lair and find Yao Yao. I originally thought that the puppet secret technique was very mysterious and would take a long time to learn. I didn't expect that after you taught it to me once, I only used 2 hours to successfully take over Oolong's body. Burial of Heaven's voice sounded in his mind. He said in a serious tone, "Tonight I'm only teaching you the puppet secret technique. When you're stronger, I'll teach you the doppelganger secret technique. Before you reach the spirit-refining realm and condense your divine soul, your soul can't leave your body. Even if I taught you the puppet secret technique and the doppelganger secret technique, you wouldn't be able to learn them. Now that you've reached the spirit-refining realm and condensed your divine soul, with your talent and comprehension, it'll be easy for you to learn these 2 secret techniques." Zhou Xian nodded and said expectantly, "For now, I have to find Yao Yao as soon as possible and save her from the demon emperor's lair. After this is over, you have to teach me the doppelganger secret technique as soon as possible. If I can cultivate a clone, my strength will definitely skyrocket and I will accomplish many unimaginable feats. The soul refinement realm is indeed a realm that surpasses the limits of mortals and possesses all sorts of divine abilities." At this moment he could feel the difference between the spirit refining stage and the divine origin stage. It was like the difference between heaven and earth. Burial of Heaven said in a deep voice, "Xianxia, I have to remind you that although you've already possessed the body of a demon and disguised yourself as one, you're still a demon. But after all, you are not a true demon. Once you use a secret martial art, you will expose the attribute of your power and the demons will see through your flaws. If he was dealing with an ordinary demon, he would only need to use ordinary martial arts and sword techniques to deal with them. But if you encounter a fiend race powerhouse, you mustn't use your secret arts. Otherwise you'll be seen through." Zhou Xian's joy and anticipation immediately cooled down, as if a basin of cold water had been poured over his head. Damn it, I was so excited just now that I actually forgot about this. Burial of Heaven, this won't do. If I want to rescue Yao Yao, I'll definitely have to fight with a fiend race powerhouse. Don't tell me that I have to cultivate a fiend race secret art to not reveal any flaws? Burial of Heaven thought for a moment and said in a deep voice, "Ordinary fiend race martial arts and secret arts are relatively simple. With your aptitude and perception you'll be able to learn them very quickly. But the profound and powerful fiend race secret arts require a very long time to cultivate. Moreover, the fiend race's profound secret arts are very bloody and cruel. You can't possibly slaughter ordinary people just to cultivate. There's only one way now." "What way?" Zhou Xian's heart was filled with strong expectations. Burial of Heaven said in a calm voice, "You need to learn some simple fiend race martial arts and secret arts to deal with ordinary fiend race and enemies. But you also need to cultivate the 9 swords of Burial of Heaven to greatly increase your battle prowess to deal with fiend race powerhouses. The 9 swords of Burial of Heaven is the sword art I used before. It's also a sword art created by Kenshin himself. It's the simplest sword art. Although it doesn't look like a fiend race secret art, it doesn't look like a human race magic art either. At least it won't expose your identity. Hearing Burial of Heaven's words, Ji Tianxing's blood immediately boiled. His eyes revealed deep excitement. Burial of Heaven's 9 swords? That's the sword art you used to repel Marshal Zhou and Tu Ren when I went to save my father? At that time, Ji Chongkong was being held hostage by 2 fiend marshals, and he went to rescue him alone. At the critical moment, it was Burial of Heaven's soul doppelganger that used an unfathomable and miraculous sword art to save Ji Chongkong and repel the 2 fiend marshals. From then on, Ji Tianxing deeply remembered Burial of Heaven's sword art. He had long made up his mind to learn the 2 sword arts from Burial of Heaven after he broke through to the soul-tempering realm. Now his wish was finally about to come true. Burial of Heaven's 9 swords. It's a supreme sword art created by Kenshin himself. That's great. Just from the name of this sword technique, Ji Tianxing could guess that this was definitely a peerless sword technique that was unparalleled in the world. However, Burial of Heaven said in a low voice, Tianxing, although a soul-tempering realm martial artist can cultivate the 9 swords of Burial of Heaven, you can only cultivate the first and second moves. After all, Kenshin's self-created sword art is a supreme sword art that is half a step from the divine realm. Whether you are in the soul-tempering realm or the martial sage realm in the future, you have to concentrate on cultivating this sword art. The sword art is very profound and mysterious. Even if you have great talent and comprehension, it will be difficult for you to comprehend it in a short period of time, let alone cultivate it. Ji Tianxing was a little disappointed. He quickly asked, Burial of Heaven, how long do you think it will take for me to master the first 2 moves? If it only took 3 to 5 days, he would definitely be willing to find a place to hide and cultivate in seclusion. He would concentrate on comprehending the 9 swords of Burial of Heaven. However, Burial of Heaven said in a serious tone, with your talent and comprehension, plus my guidance, you will need at least a month to master the first move. As for the second move, you might need 3 months to master it. It might also take half a year. A month? I can only master the first move? Ji Tianxing immediately frowned and his face turned pale. He could not believe that the number 1 genius of the human tribe would need a month to master the first move. How profound were the 9 swords of Burial of Heaven? How powerful was it? After a long silence, he sighed helplessly. After all, it is a supreme sword art that is half a step from the divine realm. It will not be easy to master it in a short period of time. Forget it, I will not cultivate this sword art for the time being. I can't waste any more time. I have to rescue Yao Yao as soon as possible. Buried Heaven grunted in response, agreeing with his decision. The night passed quickly. The next morning, Ji Tianxing flew over a snow-covered mountain range and found a medium-sized tribe in the mountains. This demon tribe occupied a few mountains in a radius of 100 miles. There were more than 80,000 demon tribesmen in it. Chapter 1043. The Blood Crystal Tribe was located in the mountains. In the wide valley, there were rows upon rows of houses, which made it look like a small town. The demon clan had hollowed out the mountains and underground around the small town to build many demon caves. Tens of thousands of demon clan civilians lived in those caves. Most of the people in this tribe were from the Blood Demon clan. They were good at using the secret techniques of the Blood Demon sect. Most of the demon clan members were at the mystic realm. There were more than 200 original core realm warriors, and more than 30 sky origin realm warriors. As for the soul refining realm warriors, they could only be found in a large tribe with hundreds of thousands of people. The strongest warrior in the Blood Crystal tribe was the tribal chief, who was at the sky origin realm level 8. Ji Tianxing stayed in the Blood Crystal tribe to ask for information and clues, but the demon clan members didn't recognize him. 3 days later, he used some tricks to get a map of the northern desert from a demon clan leader. With this map, he could understand the terrain of the northern desert and the distribution of forces. This evening, he was walking in the small town. He was about to go to a house in the east of the town to ask for some information. The owner of that house was a merchant who traveled around the northern desert. He was well informed. However, as soon as he walked to a street, he found that many demon clan civilians were rushing to the deserted street. Thousands of devilish citizens hurried toward the mountain behind the small town with expectant looks on their faces. That mountain was the forbidden area of the Blood Crystal tribe. There was a giant demon cave in the mountain where the tribal chief and the high priest lived. Ji Tianxing saw thousands of civilians rushing to the forbidden area. He was confused. What are they doing? Did something big happen in the Blood Crystal tribe? He hurried to stop a demon clan young man who was in a hurry. He asked in the demon clan's language, "Brother, what are you going to do?" The demon clan young man looked at him with surprise. He asked with a strange tone, "Brother, you're not a member of the Blood Crystal tribe. You must be an outsider, right?" Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "That's right. I'm a member of the Ural tribe. I just came here 2 days ago." "I knew it." The demon young man revealed an as expected expression. He lowered his voice and said, "Brother, today is the Blood Crystal tribe's blood sacrifice ceremony. Since the saintess was conferred the title by His Majesty the Demon Emperor half a year ago, on the last day of every month, she would cast the ancient demon mystic art and send down the holy spring water to our people. Every month on this day the chieftain and high priest would hold a blood sacrifice ceremony and gather everyone to the primogeniture altar to receive the baptism of the holy spring water." "What? Don't tell me your Ula tribe doesn't have these?" After saying that, the demon youth looked at him with a puzzled expression. Clearly he didn't understand. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and hurriedly explained, "Our Ula tribe is too small. We are all old, weak, sick and disabled. How could we have an ancestral altar?" "Oh, I see." The demon young man looked at him sympathetically, then smiled and said, "No wonder you left your homeland and came to our Blood Crystal tribe. Brother, in a while follow me to the primogeniture altar and receive the baptism of the holy spring water. After you've been baptized, I guarantee you'll be reborn. Your talent and aptitude will skyrocket and you'll become an elite expert soon. You can stay in our Blood Crystal tribe in the future. Only in a big tribe like ours can you have a better future." Ji Tianxing was surprised and asked in disbelief, "Is the holy spring water so miraculous? Can it really make a person reborn?" The demon youth hurriedly nodded and patted his chest proudly. "This is something I've experienced personally. How could I lie to you? 5 months ago I was only at the 3rd level of the origin core stage. After the baptism of the holy spring water, I've risen to the 5th level of the origin core stage in these 5 months. Not only me but everyone who's been baptized by the holy spring water has their talent and aptitude stimulated, and their strength is growing rapidly. Moreover, we won't transform on the night of the full moon, and we don't have to endure the torture of the star brilliance fire." The demon youth was still talking excitedly, and his words were filled with excitement and pride. Ji Tianxing's expression had changed and he thought to himself, so that's how it is. The devil clan's bloodline curse has been removed, and they're no longer shackled and tortured. I didn't expect that the thing that helped the devil clan remove the curse and shackles was the so-called holy spring water. When he thought up to here he thought of another question and he asked, "Brother, do you know who the holy maiden is? Why haven't I heard that there's a holy maiden in our tribe?" The demon youth shook his head and said seriously, "I haven't heard of her before either. It's said that the holy maiden was conferred by His Majesty the Devil Emperor over half a year ago. However, the holy maiden saved us from the pain and torture, and she even stimulated our talent and aptitude. In everyone's heart, the holy maiden is the kindest and most benevolent goddess, and her status is only inferior to the first ancestor of our tribe and the current devil emperor." Ji Tianxing frowned slightly and a faint guess appeared in his heart. Half a year ago, wasn't that after Yao Yao was captured by the devil emperor? Could it be that the holy maiden of the devil clan who was suddenly conferred is related to Yao Yao? That's impossible. Yao Yao has the heavenly spirit sacred body, and is most afraid of devil chi entering the body. Moreover, she would never wallow in the mire with the devil clan, and would never become the holy maiden of the devil clan. Although he felt that this idea was absurd, deep in his heart, there was always a trace of worry, afraid that his guess would become the truth. "Hey, what's wrong with you? What are you thinking about?" The demon youth saw that he was distracted and waved his hand in front of his eyes. "Don't just stand there. Quickly follow me to the primogeniture altar to receive the baptism. We have to hurry. If we're late we won't be able to get a seat." After saying that, the demon youth didn't care if Ji Tianxing was willing or not, and pulled him to the mountain behind the town. Not long after, the two of them followed the crowd and entered the devil cave in the mountain. The spacious and dark devil cave could accommodate thousands of people, and there was an ancient altar in the cave. It was the primogeniture altar. When Ji Tianxing and the demon youth arrived, the surroundings of the primogeniture altar were already crowded with people. Those who had yet to enter the devil cave could only line up outside the cave and wait. The tribe's chief and high priest were standing on the altar, presiding over the blood sacrifice ceremony. 8 Sky Origin stage experts of the devil clan were scattered around the altar, and joined hands to cast a secret technique, causing the primogeniture altar to light up with a dazzling bloody light. After 100 breaths of time, the tribe's chief high priest and several experts finished casting the secret technique. The altar released an endless bloody light, which turned into a bloody light pillar that shot into the sky. Above the blue dome of heaven, a mysterious black chi wrapped in a clear stream immediately descended to the top of the altar. Chapter 1044. When the mysterious black energy wrapped around the clear stream fell into the altar, the thousands of people in the demon cave showed fanatical gazes. To the many demons, that clear and flawless holy spring water was the holy water that could change their bodies and eliminate their pain. Then the chief and high priest of the tribe started to cast the spell. The thousands of people around the primogeniture altar all knelt on the ground and bowed towards the primogeniture altar. The pool at the top of the altar surged with bloody light and started to boil like boiling water. The clear and flawless holy spring water immediately turned into billions of water pillars that flew into the air and sprinkled on the people's bodies like drizzling rain. Ji Tianxing saw with his own eyes that dozens of tiny water droplets quickly burrowed into his body after landing on his body. Then he could clearly feel the holy spring water cleansing his body quickly, removing the impurities in his flesh and bones and strengthening his body. Not only that, the holy spring water also had a faint trace of mysterious power that entered his blood and subtly removed some kind of curse power. As expected, the holy spring water has removed the bloodline curse of the demons and strengthened their bodies and talents. In the past, the demons were cursed and shackled, unable to develop and grow. They could only hide in the northern desert and struggle at death's door until now. Now that the demon emperor has returned and is sitting in the heavenly devil palace, the demons have a saintess that can use the holy spring water to remove the bloodline curse of the demons. The demons are growing stronger day by day and their ambitions are growing crazily. They will definitely invade the humans, Yao and water races. Sooner or later they will conquer the world. Ji Tianxing thought silently. His expression became serious and deep worry appeared in the depths of his eyes. Soon the thousands of people around the altar had been baptized by the holy spring water. Everyone had joyful smiles on their faces as they excitedly discussed among themselves. Many demons even broke through their bottlenecks on the spot and their strength increased again. They excitedly exclaimed. The demonic cave was bustling with noise and excitement. The chief of the tribe, who was tall and strong and wore golden armor, quickly waved the dark gold scepter in his hand and signaled for everyone to quiet down. Waiting until the devil cave quieted down, he announced with a serious tone, "Today is the blood offering ceremony of our blood crystal clan, and also the day our clansmen will be baptized by the holy spring water. Over the past few months, we have been blessed by His Majesty the Devil Emperor and baptized by Her Highness the Saintess. We have been gradually freed from pain and suffering and we have been reborn. Our blood crystal tribe is getting more and more powerful. We have more and more young geniuses and elite warriors. Today, in addition to the blood sacrifice ceremony, I would like to announce 2 important things. I just received the news yesterday. The first thing was to follow the orders of His Majesty, the Demon King. Every middle-sized tribe had to select 1,000 warriors and gather at Heaven Moat City. Soon our army will march to the battlefield and invade the West Wasteland. As the tribal chief's voice fell, the countless demons inside and outside the cave cheered excitedly, all of them eager to give it a try. The tribal chief waved the dark gold scepter and continued to announce, the second thing was to protect the saintess. His Majesty the Devil Emperor wants to select a team of 100 personal guards for the saintess. Every tribe can select 1 young expert to go to Baishan City to participate in the arena competition. Only the top 100 people can become the personal guards of the saintess. After he announced this news, the demons inside and outside the cave became excited again. Countless young demons were excitedly discussing and cheering, shouting that they wanted to participate in the selection. To the demons, no matter if it was to go to the battlefield to fight or to participate in the arena competition, becoming the personal guards of the Saintess was something that made their blood boil. The demons were warlike, bloodthirsty, cruel, cold-blooded, and cunning. This was their nature. Especially when facing creatures from other clans, the demons' deep-rooted bad habits would be vividly displayed. The tribal chief saw that everyone was so excited, and the noise in the cave was like muffled thunder. He waved the scepter again to signal everyone to be quiet. Everyone, I would like to remind you. Those who want to sign up for the warrior selection must be at least at the 5th level of the profound comprehension stage. Those who want to sign up for the personal guard selection must be at least at the 5th level of the origin core stage. After the blood sacrifice ceremony ends, those who want to sign up can stay behind. The Grand Priest and I will select carefully. Hearing the tribal chief's words, the hot-blooded crowd calmed down. After all, there were not many people who met the requirements. The thousands of people in the Devil Cave had been baptized by the Saint's spring water and left the Devil Cave one after another. Those who wanted to sign up for the selection stayed outside the Devil Cave and did not leave. The people who lined up outside the Devil Cave rushed into the Devil Cave to be baptized by the Saint's spring water. Xianxia and the demon young man left the cave and stood beside a huge rock outside the cave. They didn't leave. The young demon said excitedly to Xianxia, I didn't expect that His Majesty the Devil Emperor would finally gather an army to attack the demon clan in the western desert. I've been conserving my strength for over 10 years. I've long wanted to rush to the battlefield and make a name for myself. Xianxia paid no attention to him and his heart was filled with worry and rage. But he was in the Devil Clan's tribe and couldn't reveal hatred and killing intent, otherwise he would be exposed. The young demon didn't notice Xianxia's abnormality and continued. I originally wanted to participate in the personal guard selection and become the personal guard of Her Majesty the Holy Maiden. But the requirement to participate in the selection is to be at the 5th level of the origin core stage. Even if I can participate, I'll surely be unable to obtain first place. But Her Majesty the Holy Maiden is like a goddess that educates the common people and saves the common people. If I can be selected as her personal guard and be able to see her every day, then how lucky would I be? Xianxia remained silent and didn't reply as he was considering something. The young demon glanced at him and frowned. Brother, what are you thinking about? Could it be that you want to go to the battlefield with me to kill enemies? Xianxia's thoughts were interrupted, and he shook his head with an expressionless face. I want to participate in the personal guard selection. Brother, you're thinking of the same thing as me. The young demon laughed heartily and patted Xianxia's shoulder. Brother, although we've just met and I don't know your strength, I think you're definitely extraordinary. I definitely have no hope of becoming the Holy Maiden's personal guard. I hope you can fulfill my wish and obtain first place in our tribe. After that, you can go to White Mountain City and compete with the geniuses of the various tribes. If you really become the Holy Maiden's personal guard in the future, please don't forget about me. The corner of Xianxia's mouth twitched and he nodded with a fake smile. In fact, this was a decision he had just made. He suspected that the Devil Clan's Holy Maiden who appeared out of nowhere might be related to Yun Yao. Chapter 1045. The tens of thousands of commoners from the Blood Crystal tribe entered the Devil Cave in batches to receive the baptism of the holy spring water. 4 hours later, the blood sacrifice ceremony ended. It was late at night, and the commoners who did not participate in the selection left the Devil Cave. Those who wanted to participate in the selection of warriors and guards stayed in the Devil Cave to wait for the selection by the chieftain and grand priest. There were more than 3,000 Devil Clan's young men standing around the progenitor altar. Everyone was excited and looked at each other with anticipation as they discussed in whispers. The chieftain swept his gaze across the crowd and waved the dark gold scepter in his hand. He said loudly, "Those who want to participate in the selection of the Saintess's guards, follow me to the practice field. Those who want to participate in the selection of warriors, stay here and wait for the Grand Priest selection." It was obvious that the Grand Priest was in charge of the selection of warriors, and the chieftain was in charge of the selection of the Saintess's guards. As soon as he finished speaking, more than 30 Devil Clan's young men who had reached the 5th level of the Origin Core stage walked out of the crowd. Everyone followed the chieftain out of the Devil Cave and headed to the practice field in the town. Ji Tianxing followed the group expressionlessly. He was silent and did not speak as excited as the others. Soon after, everyone arrived at the practice field in the town. The practice field in the Blood Crystal tribe was an open-air plaza with a radius of 300 meters. It was late at night and the cold wind whistled as snow fell. The practice field was covered with a thick layer of snow. Ji Tianxing and more than 30 Devil Clan's young men stepped on the thick layer of snow and walked into the practice field. The chieftain stood in the middle of the practice field and waved the dark gold scepter, releasing thousands of rays of bloody light that scattered around the practice field. The practice field's defensive formation was instantly activated. A dark red blood-colored screen of light enveloped the entire training field. The chieftain held the scepter and announced in a solemn tone, "Although everyone is eager to participate in the selection of the Saintess's guards, only one person can win in the end. I'll start the random selection now and all of you will have to fight in pairs to determine the winner. The loser will be eliminated on the spot, and the winner will continue to challenge until the winner is decided." Hearing the chief's words, the hearts of the 30 or so demon race youths clenched, and their expressions became grave. Over 30 people had participated in the competition, but in the end, only one person had emerged victorious. Such an intense competition not only did not make them cower, but instead stimulated their fighting spirit and fighting spirit. At this moment, the tribal chief took out a piece of parchment with everyone's names written on it. He said in a dignified voice, "The first round, Yi Luqing versus Bach." Two burly demon clan youths in leather armor strode out of the crowd. Their auras were intrepid. The two of them walked to the middle of the martial arts practice field and stood still. They looked at each other and a strong fighting spirit burst out from their bodies. A dark red blood light lit up. "Begin." The tribal chief waved his scepter and shouted in a deep voice. Both of them let out a low roar and immediately erupted with powerful strength. They pounced at each other like fierce tigers, brandishing their fists and legs, causing the sky to be filled with bloody light. Ping ping ping. The two of them did not use any weapons. They only used their fists, kicks and body movements. They used the Devil Path secret techniques to attack each other. Muffled sounds of collisions and the roars of the two of them erupted and reverberated in the night sky. Unknowingly, the two of them had exchanged more than 20 moves. Their faces were swollen and their bodies were covered in wounds and blood. However, it was as though they did not feel any pain at all. They fought even more ferociously. Both of them were at the 6th level of the Origin Core stage. After exchanging more than 100 moves, they were still evenly matched. The 30 or so youths in the martial arts practice field watched the battle without blinking. They cheered and shouted for the two of them. Ji Tianxing also stared at the two of them, silently observing their martial arts techniques and secret techniques. Nobody would have thought that he was not observing the battle to watch the battle, but to secretly learn the Devil Clan's martial arts and secret techniques. He had a photographic memory, so after watching the two Devil Clan youths execute their martial arts and secret techniques, he was able to imitate them very quickly. After a few minutes, the two of them in the martial arts practice field had exchanged more than 200 moves before the victor was finally decided. The Devil Clan youth called Yi Luqing was defeated. He walked out of the martial arts practice field covered in blood and left with a gloomy expression. He obtained victory, but it was a difficult victory. His entire body was covered in wounds and blood. The chief took out a piece of parchment and read out the name of another Devil Clan youth. Thus, a tall and strong young man walked out of the crowd and continued to challenge He. Although the two of them were similar in strength, He had already fought a fierce battle and suffered heavy injuries. He had exhausted a lot of his strength. There was no need to doubt the result. The two of them had only exchanged more than 20 moves before He was beaten to the ground and unconscious on the spot. Two Devil Clan youths rushed up and carried the unconscious He away. The chief continued to read out names. Another Devil Clan youth entered the martial arts practice field and challenged the strong young man. As time passed, the commotion in the martial arts practice field spread and attracted countless Devil Clan citizens to watch. 2,000 to 3,000 people surrounded the martial arts practice field and watched the battle through the blood-light formation. They cheered for the Devil Clan youths. One by one, the Devil Clan youths entered the martial arts practice field to challenge their opponents. Everyone fought fiercely in the martial arts practice field. The violent and raging force blew away the snow on the ground. The dazzling and resplendent blood light illuminated the dark night sky. The dark brown rocky ground was also cracked by the shockwaves of the battle, and many holes appeared in it. After 2 hours, more than 20 of the 30-plus Devil Clan youths were eliminated. Only 10 people were left. Finally the chief read out a name. Wulong. Ji Tianxing was stunned for a moment. He hurriedly walked out of the crowd and came to the center of the martial arts practice field. The opponent he wanted to challenge was a Devil Clan youth who was taller and stronger than him. This person had the strength of an 8th-level Origin Core stage martial artist and had already won 4 rounds consecutively. Wulong? Why have I never heard of your name? The Devil Clan youth raised his hand to wipe away the remaining bloodstains on his face. He looked at Ji Tianxing with a sidelong glance and grinned. His eyes that were crimson-red like fire flickered with a violent and bloodthirsty light, causing him to look extremely savage and terrifying. Ji Tianxing was expressionless. He said calmly, "It doesn't matter if you haven't heard of my name before. After tonight you'll forever remember my name." When they heard his confident and arrogant words, the thousands of Devil Clansmen watching the battle in the surroundings cheered and laughed excitedly. They cheered for him. The Devil Clan youth was instantly enraged. He roared in a low voice and transformed into a dazzling blood light that exploded with an invincible force that charged towards Xianxia. "Bastard! How dare you be so arrogant? Go to hell." In just a blink of an eye, the Devil Clan youth transformed into a huge blood light sword that charged towards Ji Tianxing. The spectating Devil Clansmen in the surroundings exclaimed in surprise and cheered. Chapter 1046. Kaboom! A loud, muffled sound rang out. The 2 bloody swords exploded at the same time, turning into thousands of bloody fragments, splashing in all directions. Suddenly, the bloody light in the training field was overflowing and the wind was raging. Everyone saw with their own eyes that the demon youth was sent flying by Ji Tianxing's sword. He spat out a mouthful of blood as he was sent flying dozens of feet away. He fell on the ground and rolled a dozen times. After that, the demon youth couldn't get up anymore. Seeing this scene, the thousands of spectators were stunned. They opened their eyes wide and their faces were full of shock. In the Blood Crystal tribe, the demon youth was a famous young genius and his fighting power was outstanding. If it wasn't for that, he wouldn't have been able to win 4 matches in a row and defeat 4 young experts so easily. However, no one expected that Ji Tianxing would use only one sword to severely injure him and make him lose his fighting power. How terrifying was Ji Tianxing's power? For a moment, thousands of spectators were looking at Ji Tianxing. Their eyes were full of curiosity and respect. Even the chief of the tribe had a whole new level of respect for him. His eyes were shining as he looked at him. "Wulong, if I remember correctly, you don't seem to be a member of our Blood Crystal tribe, right?" The chief stood on the high platform in the training field looking down at Ji Tianxing. He said in a dignified tone. Ji Tianxing performed a demon etiquette and said calmly, "Chief is right. I come from the far south and I am the #1 genius of the Ula tribe. Our tribe is too small and I have great ambitions. I don't want to be mediocre, so I left my home and came here a few days ago." After listening to his explanation, the spectators were enlightened. The chief of the tribe wasn't angry. Instead, he was gratified. He nodded and said, "Very good. This is the ideal and ambition of a young genius. In the future you will be a member of our Blood Crystal tribe. I hope you can win first place and make our Blood Crystal tribe famous." Ji Tianxing cupped his hands and said expressionlessly, "Thank you, Chief. I will do my best." The chief nodded with satisfaction and waved his hand to signal the 2 guards to carry the injured demon youth away. Next, Ji Tianxing stood in the middle of the training field, waiting to accept the challenges of the other demon youths. The chief took out the parchment and read out the name of a young demon. The youth from the demon clan, whose body was as sturdy as a black bear, stepped onto the martial arts practice field with heavy footsteps. His eyes glowed red as he stared at Ji Tianxing. His voice was like a broken gong as he shouted, "Wulong, you outsider, don't even think about taking first place. The honor belongs to us." After saying that, he rushed towards Ji Tianxing without hesitation, waving his fists and blasting out 8 fist lights condensed from blood light. Ji Tianxing's figure was immediately enveloped by the enormous fist radiance. He seemed to be surrounded by danger and was on the verge of death. However, his expression did not change. He calmly raised his arms and fiercely threw out two huge bloody fist shadows. Bang bang. In a deafening muffled sound, the fist radiance released by the demon youth exploded on the spot. The two fist shadows that Ji Tianxing unleashed, however, erupted with an incomparably violent power that ruthlessly bombarded the demon clan youth. Bang! With a muffled explosion, the demon youth was blown away. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. His vision turned black and he fainted. He had also heavily injured his opponent with one move. Moreover, when his opponent used a sword technique, he used a sword technique to counter it. When his opponent used a fist technique, he used a fist technique to counter it. Whether it was his sword technique or his fist technique, they were both very simple and crude. With an incomparably domineering attitude, he crushed his opponent. The thousands of demon commoners watching were once again stunned and let out waves of exclamations and shouts. The chief's expression became even more gratified. His eyes surged with joy as he continued to read out the next name. The third demon youth stepped onto the martial arts practice field and attacked Ji Tianxing with all his might. This person used a secret technique of the demon race. Monstrous bloody light condensed into a demonic dragon and fiercely attacked Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing immediately used what he had learned. He used a secret technique of the demon race that he had secretly learned. He absorbed the bloody light in all directions and condensed it into a demonic dragon that attacked his opponent. Boom! A loud sound shook the sky. The two bloody demonic dragons exploded at the same time, turning into thousands of pieces that scattered on the martial arts practice field. A violent hurricane spread out, shaking the dozen or so demon youths on the martial arts practice field and forcing them to retreat a dozen steps. Ji Tianxing's opponent had already been blown 100 meters away by the bloody demonic dragon. He was severely injured and spat out blood on the ground. He could not even get up. Another insta-kill. The thousands of demon commoners who had witnessed Ji Tianxing's terrifying strength all exclaimed in shock. They were full of respect and admiration for him. Next, the fourth demon youth stepped onto the stage to challenge. This person suffered the same fate as the previous three. He was blasted flying by Ji Tianxing with a single move. He was heavily injured and spat out blood as he fell to the ground. The remaining few demon youths stepped onto the stage in succession and challenged Ji Tianxing. The 5th, 6th, 7th. Until the 10th demon youth challenged Ji Tianxing, the result was the same. No matter if it was the 5th level, 8th level or 9th level of the origin core stage, all of the 10 demon youths were heavily injured by Ji Tianxing with a single move. Fortunately, the tribe's patriarch had said long ago that the rules of the competition did not forbid injuries and bleeding, but they could not kill. Otherwise, Ji Tianxing would really want to blast all his opponents into pieces. Because he knew that these demon youths were all ferocious and bloodthirsty. Even if they couldn't become the personal guards of the Saintess, they would still be selected as warriors to rush to the Western Desolation battlefield and slaughter the demon commoners. Not long after, these people would be the executioners that slaughtered the commoners of the human and demon races. Unfortunately, for the sake of concealing his identity and rescuing Yunyao, he could only restrain his killing intent. After the 10 demon youths were all defeated, there was no one else that stepped onto the stage to challenge. The selection of the Saintess personal guards ended just like that, and Ji Tianxing seized the first place without hesitation. He used a valiant and invincible manner to consecutively defeat 10 opponents, causing everyone's eyeballs to fall out from shock as they roared madly in excitement. The entire martial arts practice grounds was in an uproar as everyone was immersed in enormous shock and disbelief. No one was able to believe that such an abnormal genius would actually appear in a small tribe that was on the verge of annihilation. This was simply too unbelievable. The tribe's patriarch was madly excited as well, as if he'd picked up a rare treasure. He waved his dark gold scepter and continuously shouted a few times before making everyone quiet down. I announce that Oolong has obtained the first place in the selection of the Saintess personal guards this time. Oolong, you have to stay in our blood crystal tribe and wait for 20 days. After 20 days, you have to represent our blood crystal tribe and rush to White Mountain City to participate in the arena competition. Even if I can't master it, I can at least deepen my understanding of it. Ji Tianxing sat cross-legged in the secret chamber and spoke to Burial of Heaven via soul transmission. Burial of Heaven pondered for a moment, then said in a solemn tone, "That's good. The 9 Swords of Burial of Heaven is a Kenshin secret art that you'll have to learn sooner or later. In the future, when you deal with soul refinement realm cultivators, you'll definitely have to use these 9 sword techniques. The earlier you comprehend them, the better. Now I'll teach you the first move of the 9 Swords of the Burial of Heaven. Sword drawl. This is the foundation of this sword technique. But it's also the sword technique that requires you to practice a million times. When you practice it to the limit, you'll be able to connect with God." Hearing Burial of Heaven's words, Ji Tianxing was startled. He frowned and asked, "Burial of Heaven, you said before that this is a half-step God realm sword technique, and it's also a sword technique that's simple. But the first move is just sword draw. Isn't that too simple? In the mortal world, even body refinement realm cultivators who haven't cultivated true essence would practice sword draw diligently." Burial of Heaven didn't deny his words. He said earnestly, "In today's martial arts world, everyone pursues gorgeous and splendid martial arts moves in order to shock people and show off their strength. Especially the cultivators above the sky origin realm, they can easily break mountains and break rivers, release true essence light that fills the sky and shatter the earth. But in fact, these are all flashy and impractical actions that waste true essence. The 9 Swords of the Burial of Heaven created by Kenshin has reached the realm of returning to simplicity. There's no need for gorgeous scenes and light. He's the god of the sword. He's read all the sword techniques in the world and reached the realm of 10,000 swords. He merged all the complicated and profound sword techniques together to create this most labor-saving, simple and crude sword technique. But the power of this sword technique is invincible below the God realm. No sword technique can match it." Burial of Heaven's voice was low, and his tone contained unquestionable majesty and dominance. After Ji Tianxing heard this, he had many insights in his heart. He immediately understood what kind of sword technique the 9 Swords of the Burial of Heaven was. "So that's how it is. Burial of Heaven, let's start cultivating." Burial of Heaven responded and said in a serious tone, "The first move of the Burial of Heaven's 9 Swords, the sword drawing technique, draws the divine sword and splits the mountains and rivers. Wielding the sword, one's heroic spirit soars into the sky." Although the sword drawing technique sounded very simple, Burial of Heaven explained hundreds of words to Ji Tianxing, teaching him the trick of cultivating the sword drawing technique, as well as the route and method of exerting force. Although these were all the basics of sword techniques, Kenshin had merged countless sword techniques in the world into this sword technique. Just one sword drawing technique contained 365 changes and could counter all the sword techniques in the world. Ji Tianxing immersed himself in the sword technique cultivation and focused on comprehending. Soon he entered a state of selflessness and forgot about the passage of time. About 10 days later, he finally understood the essence of the sword drawing technique and vaguely touched the threshold of this sword technique. Next, he began to circulate his dermic powers according to the chant and simulated the hundreds of changes of the sword drawing technique in his soul. He began to cultivate diligently. Soon another 8 days passed. On the morning of the 19th day, Ji Tianxing ended his cultivation and opened his eyes. The moment he opened his eyes, an invisible sword light appeared in his eyes. It was dazzling and sharp. Swoosh! That sharp and oppressive invisible sword intent actually lit up the gloomy secret room and tore the air into pieces. Ji Tianxing slowly stood up and looked at the wall with a serious and solemn expression. The dark brown stone wall was very hard and firm. It was also protected by a heavenly origin stage array. He did not use his dermic powers or the broken sword. He slowly raised his right hand and used the sword drawing technique. Although he did not have a sword in his hand, the sword was in his heart. The invisible sharp sword chi condensed into an invisible sword. With a wave of his right palm, it was unsheathed at lightning speed. The violent sword chi that seemed to be able to tear the world apart slashed the wall of the secret room. Crack! At that moment, a crisp explosion sounded. The heavenly origin stage array protecting the secret room was destroyed by the invisible sword chi and collapsed on the spot. The 2-meter-thick stone wall that was as sturdy as a city wall also collapsed on the spot and turned into a pile of rubble. Not only that, but the power of the invisible sword chi did not dissipate. It went through the secret room's wall and destroyed 3 houses before dissipating. The dilapidated old house was turned into a pile of rubble on the spot. It was a complete mess. Ji Tianxing slowly retracted his right hand. His eyes shone with joy and his lips curled into a smile. Chapter 1048. Burial of Heaven once said that with Ji Tianxing's talent and comprehension, he would need at least a month to master the first move of Burial of Heaven's 9 swords. But he did not expect that Ji Tianxing would only use 18 days to master the first move. Although Ji Tianxing was just a beginner and had not understood the essence of this sword move, let alone the charm of the sword move. But he had indeed succeeded and he had successfully used it in one move. This made Burial of Heaven exclaim in amazement and feel that it was unbelievable. It also had a deeper understanding of Ji Tianxing's talent and comprehension. Ji Tianxing did not use his true essence or mana, and only used his sword intent and invisible sword qi to destroy half of the house. Such terrifying and shocking power was something that even he himself had not expected. Looking at the brick ruins and the ground full of cracks and gullies, he excitedly clenched his fists, his eyes surging with light. As expected of a half-step divine realm sword move. This is just the beginner's first move. I have just mastered it and it has such terrifying power. I did not even use my true essence. If I use my full strength, the power of this move is unimaginable. Burial of Heaven also felt the same and said in a serious tone, Tianxing, you are just a beginner. When you practice this move 1,000,000 times, you will be able to understand the charm of the sword move. At that time, no matter if it is a spirit refinement realm expert, 1,000,000 soldiers or thousands of miles of mountains and rivers, they will not be able to block the power of your move. Ji Tianxing nodded and showed a look of expectation. At this time he noticed that there was movement outside the old house and many demons were looking inside. He knew that the sound of the house collapsing and the walls breaking must have alarmed the demons nearby. So he quickly took out Black Dragon's body, and sent his divine soul into Black Dragon's body. He had just put his physical body into the sword world when there was a rush of footsteps outside the courtyard. Greetings, Chieftain. Chieftain is here. Let's see what's going on inside. Chief, there was a commotion in this house just now. It seems like someone is fighting. Following the voices of several demon commoners, the tribal chief came to the house with 2 guards. Ji Tianxing hurriedly went up to him and saluted, Chieftain. The tribal chief looked at him expressionlessly and asked in a dignified tone, Oolong, what's going on? I heard from the people that there was a fight just now. Ji Tianxing cupped his hands and replied calmly, Chief, I think everyone has misunderstood. It's because I've been cultivating in seclusion for more than half a month and finally mastered a secret technique. When I came out of seclusion just now, I didn't control my strength, resulting in this result. After listening to his explanation, the tribal chief looked at him suspiciously and asked a few more questions. Ji Tianxing had already thought of an excuse and answered his questions one by one, dispelling the doubts in his heart. Before the tribal chief left, he said in a serious tone, Oolong, tomorrow morning, I will send a commander to escort you to White Mountain City. Get ready. Ji Tianxing frowned and thought for a while. He shook his head and said, Chief, I know how to get to White Mountain City. I can go there alone. There's no need to trouble the commander to escort me. Seeing that the tribal chief was still hesitating and considering this matter, he added, Chieftain, please don't worry. I will rush to White Mountain City as fast as I can. I won't delay the journey. Also, if you give me the document and the token, I will participate in the competition as the #1 genius of the Blood Crystal tribe. I won't embarrass the Blood Crystal tribe. After listening to his words, the tribal chief reluctantly agreed. Then the tribal chief took out a document and a token from his space ring and waved them in front of him. Oolong, I can give you this document and token. I can also not send Commander Yu to escort you. But you have to make a blood god oath to be loyal to me and prove your loyalty to the Blood Crystal tribe. No matter if you can become the personal guard of the Saintess or not, don't forget that you are a member of the Blood Crystal tribe. I am the one who gave you this opportunity. The blood god oath was a kind of poison oath that was similar to Gu. It was made in the name of the blood god of the demon race. Once the oath was broken, one would have to bear the curse and torture of the bloodline. The tribal chief was obviously afraid that Ji Tianxing would never come back after leaving the Blood Crystal tribe. Only when Ji Tianxing made the blood god oath could he trust Ji Tianxing. This was the nature of the demon race. The most common way of doing things was to be cunning and suspicious, even to their own people. Seeing that Ji Tianxing was silent and was thinking about this matter, the tribal chief patted his shoulder and comforted him. If you lose the competition, you have to come back to the Blood Crystal tribe immediately. I won't treat you badly. I will train you with all my strength. Ji Tianxing nodded, bowed to the sky with an emotionless face, and recited the blood god oath in a low voice. After he had made the oath, an invisible mysterious force descended from the sky, invading his body and blood. No doubt it was the power of the blood god oath. Once he broke the oath, his body would fester and turn into pus. His blood would dry up and he would die in agony. However, this body was his own. Even if he had to bear the torture of the oath, it had nothing to do with him. Anyway, the blood god oath couldn't affect his god soul, so it wouldn't harm him. Seeing him make the blood god oath, the tribal chief gave him the document and the token. Then he laughed contentedly and left. Ji Tianxing put away the document and the token. His eyes were dark as he watched the tribal chief leave. A murderous aura flashed in his eyes. The whole day passed quickly. The Blood Crystal tribe was bustling. People lined the streets to send off more than 1,000 warriors to the Heaven Chasm City to join the war. Those young demon race warriors were full of anticipation and excitement. They were eager to go to the Western Wasteland battlefield and slaughter the monster race people. That night, the mountains were dark and not a sound could be heard. The tribal chief was in a good mood. He drank with the other leaders until midnight and then went back to his place to rest. However, he didn't know that Ji Tianxing had already sneaked into his place. When he entered the secret chamber and was about to operate his martial art to get rid of the drunkenness, Ji Tianxing suddenly showed up. He was just 3 steps away from the tribal chief, holding a mysterious broken black sword in his hand. Shoo! Before the tribal chief could react, he had already drawn out the sword with lightning speed and slashed out a sharp beam of cold light that seemed to be able to tear the sky apart. Puff! The tribal chief was at the 8th level of the Sky Origin stage. He didn't even have a chance to dodge or defend. His body and head were chopped off by this powerful sword attack. His body was frozen on the spot. From his forehead to the left side of his abdomen, a half-meter-long blood mark appeared. The blood mark was getting bigger and bigger. Dark purple demon blood gushed out. The tribal chief's body was cut into 2 halves, falling on the ground powerlessly. Ji Tianxing put away the broken sword and expressionlessly looked at the tribal chief's body on the ground. Since you want to die, I will fulfill your wish. I have just mastered the sword drawing style. The first one I kill is you. It is your honor. He murmured and then casually shot out a red fire, covering the tribal chief's body and the demon blood on the ground. Suddenly, the tribal chief's body and blood were burning up. Soon they were burned into ashes. All of this happened in the secret chamber. There was no loud noise, no sound, and no movement. Nobody would have thought that the tribal chief of the Blood Crystal tribe would die in the secret chamber just like that. Chapter 1049. Ji Tianxing had an irreconcilable enmity with the demons. No matter who he killed, it was natural for him to do so. Moreover, the chief of the tribe had forced him to swear the blood god oath. In this way, the chief had gotten what he wanted. He had successfully killed himself. Ji Tianxing's actions were very secretive. From the time he snuck into the chief's residence to the time he killed the chief, no one was alerted. 5 days after he left the Blood Crystal tribe, the high priest and the commanders of the Blood Crystal tribe found out that the chief was missing. 8 days later, after all kinds of investigations and searches, they confirmed that the chief was dead. However, the chief had died without a complete corpse. He didn't leave any clues. The cause of his death became a huge mystery that couldn't be solved for a long time. Of course, no one would suspect Ji Tianxing. On the evening of the 10th day, Ji Tianxing crossed millions of miles of mountains and ice fields and successfully arrived at White Mountain City. The so-called White Mountain City lived up to its name. This was an ancient and majestic city located in the heart of the northern desert, among the mountains. Hundreds of thousands of demons gathered in the city with a radius of 100 miles. Many of them were experts and warriors from different tribes. The city was covered in snow all year round, making it look like a city of ice and snow. The few mountains outside the city were also covered in thick snow. All that could be seen was a blazing white. This was how White Mountain City got its name. After arriving at White Mountain City, he wasn't far from the holy land of the demons, the Heavenly Devil Palace. It would take him about 10 days of travel. Within a radius of 1,000,000 miles, White Mountain City was not only a stronghold, but also a prosperous city in the heart of the northern desert. It was also the center of information in the northern desert. When Ji Tianxing arrived at White Mountain City, it was the time when the cold wind was blowing and snow was falling. Thick snow and ice were piled up outside the southern city gate. The strong wind rolled up the snow and ice, hitting the city wall. There were more than 20 guards in black iron armor guarding the city gate. They were all experts of the Origin Core realm. Ji Tianxing took out the documents and tokens of the Blood Crystal tribe. After giving them to the guards to check, he entered the city without a hitch. There were many wide streets in the city, and countless houses and buildings were built in a rough style. Of course, the streets and alleys in the city were all covered in ice and snow. There were very few pedestrians on the streets, so it was impossible to see the appearance of the city. Ji Tianxing stepped on the thick snow and walked along the main street to the center of the city. He wanted to find an inn to stay at. Coincidentally, there was an inn 100 steps away from him at the end of the street. Although the doors and windows of the inn were tightly shut, the dim gemstone lamp outside was still lit, and the inn was bustling with people. When he pushed open the door of the inn and stood at the entrance of the lobby, the biting cold wind mixed with snow and ice crystals rushed into the lobby of the inn. The noisy hall immediately quieted down. Everyone turned their heads to look at the door. After looking at Ji Tianxing for a while, they withdrew their gazes and continued to drink and chat. Only a few people near the door glared at him unhappily or cursed him a few times. Ji Tianxing closed the door, shook off the snow on his body and stepped into the lobby. The lobby was very spacious. There were more than 20 tables, and all of them were filled with tall and strong demon warriors. On the tables in front of them, there were jars of earth spirit wine, and a few stacks of crude jerky and dried fruits. There was no other way. The resources of the northern desert were too poor. There were no flowers, plants, vegetables, birds, or animals. The food that the demon race could eat were mostly living things like beetles, rats, snakes, and ants that came from underground. In such a cold and snowy season, it was already the greatest happiness and enjoyment for these people to gather in the taverns and inns, drink a few bowls of strong earthly spirit wine, and eat a few pieces of dried gopher meat and dried fruits. Ji Tianxing saw an empty table in the corner, so he walked over and sat down. The waiter came to greet him. He took out 10 blood crystals and booked a room, and ordered a pot of hot earth spirit wine. Even though the earth spirit wine was very bad and tasted worse than the strong wine of the mortal world, he quietly sipped it. Not for anything else, he just wanted to stay in the hall for a while longer, listen to the other demons talk loudly, and gather some information from them. Before he drank half a bowl of wine, he heard the clamor of the crowd, mixed with the words Saintess and arena competition. Obviously, half of the demon warriors gathered in the lobby were from different tribes, and they had come to White Mountain City to participate in the arena competition. The other half were the residents of White Mountain City, and they were also paying attention to and discussing this matter. At this time, the door of the lobby opened again. 2 young demons, one male and one female, wearing black armor and a blood-red cloak, walked into the lobby side by side. The male was dark and his face was upright. He had a simple and honest aura, and his body was as strong as a bear. The female was tall and fit. Her skin was light purple and her purple hair reached her waist. Their eyes swept across the lobby and finally landed on Ji Tianxing. The simple and honest young man looked at the woman next to him and asked in a low voice, "Ah Luo, there's only one table that's empty. Shall we squeeze with that guy?" The purple-haired woman called Ah Luo nodded and said expressionlessly, "It's fine if we squeeze. Dexiong, go and tell him." As they spoke, they walked up to Ji Tianxing and stood in front of him. Dexiong nodded at Ji Tianxing and said in a low, muffled voice, "Brother, there are no more seats in the lobby. Can we sit down and rest for a while?" Ji Tianxing glanced at them and guessed the identity of the young man and woman. Both of them were around 30 years old, and their strength was at the 7th or 8th level Origin Core stage. Moreover, both of them looked travel-worn, so they must have rushed to White Mountain City from some tribe. Both of them were probably here to participate in the Saintess's personal guard selection. After Dexiong and Aluo sat down, they also ordered 2 jars of wine and dried meat. They ate and drank to recover their strength. Ji Tianxing sipped his wine expressionlessly, but his attention was focused on the demons at the tables nearby as he listened to their discussion. A young demon with a full beard was probably drunk. His face was flushed as he spoke loudly. I heard that the arena competition 5 days later will be held in this square in the city. It's said that the Devil King has asked the Heaven Barbaric Devil Marshal to supervise the selection of Her Highness's personal guard selection. On the day of the competition, it's said that the Heaven Barbaric Devil Marshal will be there personally to supervise the competition. The Heaven Barbaric Devil Marshal is the 3rd Devil Marshal of our clan. His name is well known in the northern desert. It's said that the Heaven Barbaric Devil Marshal was born with a heroic appearance. He was like the reincarnation of an ancient god with 4 wings and 6 arms. Chapter 1050. Hearing the young demon's words, Ji Tianxing frowned slightly and a cold light flashed in his eyes. The Heaven Barbaric Demonic Commander? It's actually him who's personally overseeing the arena competition? He was familiar with the Heaven Barbaric Demonic Commander. He even hated him to the core. When he married Yunyao and brought Yunyao back to Middle State City, the Heaven Barbaric Demonic Commander had followed the Demon King to kidnap Yunyao. When he thought of the past, his heart was filled with anger and killing intent. At the same time, he was worried about one thing. The Heaven Barbaric Demonic Commander's strength has reached LV6 of the soul refining stage. He's familiar with me. If he recognizes the aura of my spiritual soul during the arena competition, the consequences will be unimaginable. Just as he was worrying about this matter, a young man from the demon clan raised his glass and said with a smile, I heard from the grapevine that there are at least 400 to 500 people who came to White Mountain City to participate in the arena tournament. Everyone wants to become the personal guard of Her Highness the Saintess. There were also many people who came for the Saintess. They wanted to catch a glimpse of her beauty. It's a pity that only 100 people can do it. Most of them will be eliminated. I'm afraid they won't be able to see the Saint Lady for the rest of their lives. A young man from the demon clan at another table whispered, It's said that the Saint Lady is not one of us. Those who have seen her said that she is very ugly. She is short and skinny. Her skin is frighteningly white. She always wears a white dress and covers her face with a cloak and a veil. Many people don't know about this. They think that the Saint Lady is so beautiful that they want to see her face. How ridiculous and pitiful. Although his voice was not loud, everyone in the hall had the strength of the origin core realm. Naturally, they heard him clearly. Ji Tianxing frowned slightly. A strange light flashed in his eyes. He was more certain of his guess. The surrounding crowd also began to whisper to each other. Yes, I've also heard about this. I didn't expect so many people to not know about it. I thought the Saint Lady would be a rare beauty. I didn't expect her to be so ugly. Oh my God. I'd rather not hear this news. You've destroyed my beautiful fantasy. You're too despicable. That's strange. Since the Saintess is not a subject of our clan, why did the Demon Emperor confer her the title of Saintess? Skinny, short and pale. Such an ugly woman. She's even worse than the most ordinary woman in our clan. Even that woman over there is 10 times more beautiful than the Saintess, right? As the demon youth spoke, his eyes scanned the hall and finally landed on Aluo. There were dozens of young devils sitting in the main hall of the inn, but Aluo was the only woman. The young devil naturally wanted to compare her. Instantly, everyone turned to look at Aluo, sizing her up from head to toe and commenting on her. Aluo's face immediately turned cold. Her eyes flashed with anger as she glared fiercely at the demon youth. Filled with anger, she slammed the table and stood up. Looking at the people whispering to each other, she angrily scolded, "You bunch of despicable bastards. Shameless and disgusting. Regardless of the Saintess status and appearance, she's still the Saintess conferred by the Demon Emperor. How dare you bastards criticize her?" Moreover, the Saintess uses a secret technique every month to send the Saintess spring rain to all the tribes, helping our hundreds of millions of people to be reborn and relieving their pain. Do you know how kind and noble the Saintess is? She's like a reincarnated goddess, the savior of our hundreds of millions of people. But you bunch of hypocritical and disgusting bastards, you've accepted the Saintess grace and been baptized by the Saintess spring water, yet you still criticize her behind her back. Do you have any shame? Aluo's temper was fiery. and her tone was full of righteous indignation and contempt. Her words were like a heavy hammer that hammered everyone in the hall into a daze. Everyone turned their heads and stared at her in a daze. The hall fell silent, so quiet that even a pin drop could be heard. After a moment, everyone came to their senses. Most of them looked ashamed and hurriedly lowered their heads to drink, not daring to say more. A young man from the Devil clan stood up and walked toward Aluo with a sneer on his face. This person was the one who said the saintess was ugly. He was about 30 years old and possessed strength at the 9th level of the Origin Core stage. He walked up to Ji Tianxing and stood next to him. He looked down at Aluo and sneered. "Little girl, we're just chatting. Why are you so agitated? Who is the saintess to you? What does she have to do with you? Countless people know the saintess is ugly and everyone is talking about it, but the demon emperor isn't angry. We're just chatting casually. What right do you have to insult us in public? Apologize to me right now. Otherwise I won't show you any mercy. I'll make you crawl out of here." As he spoke, the young man from the Devil clan cracked his neck and clenched his fists. His entire body was surging with rage. Aluo was furious. Her eyes were burning with fury and she instinctively wanted to punch him. Big Bear, who was sitting next to her, stood up with a swoosh and rushed in front of her in a flash. "Bastard, you're seeking death!" Big Bear shouted angrily. He swung his fists at the young man from the Devil clan with all his might. "Humph! You overestimate yourself." The young man from the Devil clan snorted disdainfully. Dense black energy surged in his hands as he clenched his fists and smashed them toward Big Bear. Many sharp spikes emerged from his fists, and his fingers turned into sharp black claws with black fingernails growing out of them. Obviously, this young man from the Devil clan was from the Azura clan. He was best at close combat and had extraordinary strength. Boom! The two people's fists fiercely collided with each other, and a loud muffled sound rang out. The explosive and violent energy spread out in all directions. The blast of energy swept out, shattering the tables and chairs in the surroundings. Everyone fell to the ground. Everyone scrambled to their feet and quickly retreated to the side to watch the show. Big Bear was also sent flying by the young man from the Azura clan. He crashed into the wall, creating a big hole in the dark brown stone wall. Countless pieces of rubble flew out. When Big Bear crawled out of the rubble, he was already panting. Both of his arms were broken and hung limply at his sides. His fists were full of holes and bleeding profusely. Aluo cried out angrily and worriedly. She also threw her fists at the young man from the Azura clan. However, the young man from the Azura clan sneered contemptuously. He exploded with even more strength and sent Aluo flying with a punch. Plop! Aluo crashed into the wall, creating a big hole in it. She fell beside Big Bear and spat out blood. Chapter 1051. The lobby was in a mess. Dozens of young demons retreated to the sides and formed a circle, waiting to watch a good show. The demon race worshipped martial arts and its people were tough and bloodthirsty. They were not only cruel to outsiders but also to their own people. Moreover, the demon race had a loose legal system. Killing and robbing were common occurrences. Even in White Mountain City, where the law was relatively strict, private fights were not forbidden. As long as no one died, even the city lord's mansion would not interfere. As for the inn, they would certainly not interfere in this matter. As long as the two sides settled their grudges, someone would compensate the inn for its loss. Big Bear and Aluo stood side by side in the corner. Both were injured and they glared at the young Shura man. The young Shura man was surrounded by black smoke. Black scales and barbs could be vaguely seen on his skin and neck, showing the characteristics of the Shura race. Dozens of spectators stood around commenting and commenting, occasionally bursting into laughter. However, everyone's eyes fell on the corner, and they looked at Ji Tianxing in confusion and surprise. Because he was sitting between the young Shura man Big Bear and Aluo. Even though a fierce battle had just taken place beside him, he still sat on the bench without moving. The table, wine jar and wine bowl in front of him were all intact. Even his expression and movements were the same as before. He was still holding the wine bowl expressionlessly, sipping the wine in the bowl. His expression was indifferent, as if he did not care about anything. Seeing this, the onlookers were surprised and whispered to each other. The young Shura man frowned and squinted at Ji Tianxing. He shouted in a deep voice, "Boy, if you know what's good for you, get out of here." Luo and Big Bear hurriedly winked at Ji Tianxing, indicating that he should not get involved in this mess. But Ji Tianxing ignored them and continued to drink slowly. He said coldly, "I'll give you a chance to live. Break one of your arms and kneel down to apologize. Then you can get out of here." There was no emotion in his cold voice, but there was also an unquestionable majesty and dominance. Everyone in the hall was stunned. Their eyes were filled with disbelief as they stared at Ji Tianxing with burning eyes. Many people sucked in a breath of cold air and muttered in shock. Who is this guy? How dare you be so arrogant? So domineering. This guy must be an expert, right? Expert? This guy came in a long time ago. I couldn't tell at all. Could it be that this is a hidden expert? I don't think so. He's probably a guy from a small tribe who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. The Shura youth's face darkened. He was so angry that his whole body trembled and the veins on his forehead bulged. Break one of my arms and kneel down to apologize? With a twisted face, he scolded with a deep voice, "Little bastard, do you know who I am? How dare you be so arrogant?" As he spoke, a thick black fog surged around his body. Black bone wings appeared on his shoulders, and a row of sharp barbs appeared on his spine. This was the racial characteristic of the Shura tribe when they were enraged or when they wanted to kill their enemies with all their might. "Little bastard, I'm going to destroy you first," the Shura youth shouted. He raised his arms, which were covered with sharp barbs, and smashed them toward Ji Tianxing's head with all his might. The power of this attack was enough to create a crater with a radius of 100 meters on the ground. When everyone felt the power of this attack, they were shocked and hurriedly retreated. Luo and Xiong were also very worried. They quickly shouted for Su Ke to stop. Ji Tianxing's expression did not change. He still looked indifferent. He raised his left hand lightly and punched at the Shura youth. Boom! The fist radiance, which was condensed by blood-red brilliance, hit the Shura youth's arms with a dull thud. Instantly the Shura youth was sent flying. He slammed into the wall, creating a hole in the thick wall. Countless bricks and stones collapsed and buried him immediately. However, he fell into the rubble. His arms were shattered and he spat out blood. He struggled a few times but could not get up. A gust of strong wind blew into the hall through the hole, causing everyone to shiver in fear. Of course, it was not the wind and snow that made them feel cold. Everyone stared at Ji Tianxing with awe and fear in their eyes. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Xiong and Luo had been sent flying by the Shura youth with a single punch. The Shura clan's close combat ability was so strong that it made one's hair stand on end. When Ji Tianxing punched the Shura youth, everyone was laughing in their hearts. They were laughing at him for overestimating himself. But now the result made everyone's jaws drop. They could not believe it. At this time, Ji Tianxing stood up slowly and walked toward the Shura youth. Rustle, rustle, rustle. The sound of footsteps was like a drum, beating everyone's hearts. Everyone's hearts were in their throats. Everyone stared at Ji Tianxing. What was he going to do? What would happen to the Shura youth? Ji Tianxing walked to the hole in the wall and stopped in front of the Shura youth. He looked down at the Shura youth with a cold expression. "You insulted the saintess. Unforgivable. Originally, you could have left after breaking one of your arms and kneeling down to apologize. But now you'll have to double the punishment." As soon as he finished speaking, he lifted his right foot and stomped on the Shura youth's left shoulder with the weight of a mountain. Crack! With the crisp sound of bones breaking, the Shura youth's left shoulder was crushed. His left arm was broken. Then Ji Tianxing raised his foot and stepped on his right shoulder. Crack! The Shura youth's right shoulder was also crushed. His right arm was broken. The heart-wrenching pain made him tremble all over. He screamed in a hoarse voice. "Ah, bastard. You're dead. I'll kill you. I'll kill you." Ji Tianxing glanced at him coldly and said indifferently, "You're too noisy." With that he kicked the Shura youth away. Bam! The Shura youth crashed through the wall and flew more than 30 meters away. He landed on the street outside the inn and fell into the thick snow. He had fainted on the spot. He lay motionless in the snow. He was really dead. In the lobby, Ji Tianxing sat down in the corner with a calm expression. It was as if nothing had happened. That shocking and awe-inspiring scene was as simple as drinking water to him. After sitting down, he glanced at the innkeeper in the crowd and pointed at Zhou Xian and Aluo. Ask them for the inn's compensation. Then he lowered his head and continued drinking. He looked cool and indifferent. Chapter 1052. After watching the show, many devils quietly left the inn for fear of getting into trouble. In a short while, more than half of the people in the lobby were gone. The remaining devil clan members were all drinking wine in silence. They were talking to each other through voice transmission. They didn't dare to make any noise. The sturdy and honest bear went to discuss the compensation with the innkeeper. Aluo stared at Ji Tianxing for a while, hesitated for a moment, then walked up to him and stood still. Brother, thank you for your help just now. She bowed to Ji Tianxing and thanked him sincerely. Ji Tianxing raised his eyelids, glanced at her and said indifferently, "It's nothing. Don't mention it." Aluo was stunned for a moment, and then her eyes showed admiration. She said, "Brother, you're really noble. You must be a hidden master who doesn't care about fame and fortune, right?" Ji Tianxing didn't answer and didn't want to pay attention to her. Anyway, he had gotten the information he wanted, so he didn't want to be entangled with others. He got up and was about to leave. At this time, Bear had finished dealing with the compensation. He hurried to block his way and thanked him with a salute. "Brother, thank you for your help. I'm very grateful." Ji Tianxing didn't say anything. He ignored them and walked to the second floor of the inn to rest in his room. At this time, Bear hesitated for a moment and shouted, "Brother, please wait." Ji Tianxing stopped and turned to look at him. "What's the matter?" Bear scratched his head and said hesitantly, "Brother, I just heard them talking about the guy whose arms were broken by you. He seems to be the son of a noble in the city. I know you're powerful and won't be afraid of their revenge. But a powerful dragon can't defeat a local snake. If they come to you for revenge, it'll be troublesome." Ji Tianxing understood what he meant. He nodded and turned to walk through the lobby toward the gate. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared in the wind and snow outside the gate. Bear and Aluo looked at each other and hurriedly left the inn to find another place to stay. After this incident, they couldn't stay in the inn and could only find a place to hide. The demon race had always been cold and heartless. They would not meddle in other people's business and care about the life and death of others. If Ji Tianxing hadn't saved them, Bear wouldn't have warned Ji Tianxing. In short, in this barren land of suffering, the most worthless thing was life. Ji Tianxing braved the wind and snow to leave the inn. He found an old house in the east of the city and quietly settled down. Just as Zhou Xian had said, he wasn't afraid of the Shura clan youth's revenge. He just didn't want to cause any more trouble and delay the arena competition. After settling down in the old house, he stayed in his room and meditated in silence. Time passed quietly. Day after day passed. In these 4 days, White Mountain City became more and more lively. Many demon clan youths from different tribes entered White Mountain City. There were also several city guard troops and a group of guards from influential families, constantly searching for Ji Tianxing's whereabouts. Obviously, these people were sent by the Shura clan youth to seek revenge on Ji Tianxing. 4 days passed in the blink of an eye. Early in the morning of the 5th day, the sky was still gloomy. A bone-chilling wind blew and snow fell like goose feathers. All the people in the city rushed to the square in the center of the city. They gathered around the square waiting to watch the show. Today was the day of the arena competition. Young geniuses from different tribes would compete in martial arts under the eyes of thousands of people. The last 100 people would be chosen as the Saintess' personal guards. Soon 20 to 30,000 people of the demon clan gathered in the square, which was 1,000 meters in radius. In the center of the square, there was a tall arena with a radius of 100 meters. The arena was made of dark brown rock, surrounded by a circle of stone pillars and fences. 4 ferocious demon god statues stood in the 4 corners. More than 80 elite guards of the city lord's mansion stood motionless around the arena, wearing black armor and holding long spears. No one dared to approach the arena. It didn't take long for the young demons from the various tribes to arrive at the square. About 600 young geniuses were scattered among the crowd. They all looked at the arena with complicated expressions, thinking silently. Snow fell from the sky and the atmosphere in the arena was cold and somber. Today's arena competition was very fierce. Even though these young demons were the geniuses of their tribes, They could not help but feel nervous and worried in the face of so many strong enemies. In the northwest corner of the square, there was a young demon surrounded by 4 guards. This person's face was injured and his arms were drooping weakly. His arms were stiff like wooden sticks and he could not move them at all. He looked around angrily. His sharp eyes swept across the crowd as if he was searching for something. A guard beside him hurriedly advised, "Young Master Arnold, your body is more important. Go back to the mansion and heal your injuries. You must not participate in today's arena competition. This is the general's order." The young Shura clan youth named Arnold glared at the guard angrily and said in a low voice, "Nonsense. I'm injured like this. How can I participate in the competition? I'm looking for that bastard called Wu Long. He dared to break my arms. Today I must find him and chop him into pieces. Humph. He dares to fight with me. If I can find his name and information from the city guards, I can definitely find him." Another guard in black tried to persuade him in a low voice, "Young Master Arnold, that man injured you. Perhaps he has already escaped from Baishan City." Arnold curled his lips and sneered, "Humph. My father has already informed the city guard commander that guards the city gate. How can that kid escape from the White Mountain City? He can't escape even if he has wings. Moreover, my father has asked the city guard commander to investigate that kid. His name is Wu Long and he comes from the Blood Crystal tribe. He came here to participate in the arena competition. Today he will definitely show up. I will find him soon." The guard in black whispered, "Young Master Arnold, this is the square in the city. Tens of thousands of people are watching. Don't act rashly. Moreover, if you kill that kid in front of everyone, it will affect the arena competition. Then there will be no end to it. I heard that the Heaven Barbarian Demon Commander will come personally. You must be patient." Arnold showed a cruel smile and said proudly, "Of course I know that. Do I need you to remind me? I have already arranged for Mu Ren to take my place in the arena competition. When the time comes, my opponent will be Wu Long. I will wait for a good show. I will watch Mu Ren break all the bones in that kid's body and turn him into a soft-footed worm." The 4 guards heard him and sneered proudly. They hurriedly flattered him. "Young Master Arnold is indeed wise. This is a great plan. Mu Ren is the most elite guard commander of the general's house. He is at the 6th level of Sky Origin stage. That kid will die a horrible death." Chapter 1053. When Ji Tianxing arrived at the square in the middle of the city, he kept a low profile and nobody knew about him. He had arrived rather late. 30 to 40,000 demon commoners had already gathered in the plaza. It was so packed that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Most of the hundreds of geniuses from different tribes who were going to participate in the competition had arrived at the square and were waiting in the crowd. After a while, 2 middle-aged demon men who were well-dressed and powerful stepped onto the arena in the middle of the square. The leading burly man was wearing a long robe with golden threads and a square crown inlaid with gems. He was holding a 1-meter-long scepter in his hand. When he stepped onto the arena, all the civilians in the square bowed to him and shouted, "Greetings, Governor." The middle-aged man behind the White Mountain City Lord was dressed in dark purple armor and had a white beard. He was tall and strong with an iron-blooded murderous aura around him. It was obvious that he was an experienced general. The civilians in the square bowed again and shouted, "Greetings, General Galay." Apparently he was one of the most powerful people in White Mountain City, General Galay of the Demon Army. They were about the same level. One was at Sky Origin Stage LV7, while the other was at Sky Origin Stage LV8. However, they were already the most powerful people in White Mountain City. After the governor and General Galay stepped onto the arena, they stood still in the middle of the arena. The governor said in a loud voice, "Everyone, His Majesty the Demon King is going to select the personal guards for Her Highness the Saintess. Today the result will be decided in White Mountain City. This is my honor and also the honor of White Mountain City." In a while, everyone would see more than 600 young geniuses from various tribes battling it out in the arena. Today we are honored to welcome our 3rd Demon General, Lord Sky Barbarian Demon General. As the governor finished speaking, the tens of thousands of demon civilians in the square burst into cheers and shouts. General Galay stepped forward and gestured for the crowd to be quiet. He said in a loud voice. Lord Sky Barbarian Demon General will be in charge of today's competition. The governor will be in charge and I will be the supervisor. Now please welcome the arrival of the Sky Barbarian Demon General. After that, General Gulai and the mayor of White Mountain City stood respectfully on the arena. They turned to look towards the north and bowed to pay their respects. The tens of thousands of people in the square also bowed towards the north. Under everyone's gaze, a thick black cloud flew over from the northern sky. The demonic clouds condensed into a huge demonic face. It flew to the edge of the square as fast as lightning and stopped there. Shwa. The devilish cloud transformed into a devilish man with 4 wings and 6 arms. He was over 10 feet tall and had 4 wings and 6 arms. He was tall and sturdy like a bear. There was a single eye on his forehead, making him look extremely ferocious and terrifying. He looked down condescendingly at the tens of thousands of demons in the square. Black mist and demonic chi surged all over his body, exuding a majestic and domineering air. Tens of thousands of demon commoners in the square all looked extremely fanatical as they shouted, "Welcome, Lord Heaven Barbarian Demon General." Ji Tianxing was squeezed into the crowd and was inconspicuous. He looked up at the Sky Barbarian Demon General silently. His face was expressionless and his eyes were gloomy. Dense killing intent surged in his heart. After half a year, the Sky Barbarian Demon General still looked the same as before. His aura was even more vigorous and his strength had increased. Ji Tianxing secretly guessed that the change in strength of the Sky Barbarian Demon General probably had something to do with the baptism of the holy spring water. At this moment, the Sky Barbarian Demon General said in a thunderous voice, "Ben Shui will be personally overseeing the arena competition today. I guarantee that it will be fair. I hope that everyone will perform well and defeat the strong opponent." After saying that, he landed on a tall tower at the edge of the square. The black stone tower that was 200 feet tall was the resting place that the mayor's residence had arranged for the Sky Barbarian Demon General. Sitting in the hall on the top floor of the stone tower, one could clearly see the entire square and everything in it. The Sky Barbarian Demon General flew into the tower and entered the hall on the top floor. There were already dishes and young demon girls in the hall for the Sky Barbarian Demon General to enjoy and play. However, the tens of thousands of people in the square did not know that. They thought that the Sky Barbarian Demon General was overseeing everything in the square from the top of the tower. Everyone's blood was boiling as they discussed excitedly. Their admiration for the Sky Barbarian Demon General was like a surging river. After a long while, the lively and noisy atmosphere finally calmed down. As the host of the arena competition, the mayor of White Mountain City began to announce the rules of the competition. He looked solemn as he said in a solemn and dignified tone, "In this arena competition, the opponents will be decided by drawing lots. The winner will advance and the loser will be eliminated. In the end, the top 100 winners will be selected as the personal guards of the Saintess. During the arena competition, all weapons are allowed, but pets and other external forces are not allowed. Injuries are not prohibited, but no deaths are allowed. When the opponent admits defeat, you must stop attacking immediately. Otherwise, you will be punished by General Gulai." With that, the mayor of White Mountain City waved his hand and took out 660 white jade slips, which floated in the air. "General Gulai, please draw lots to decide your opponents." General Gulai did not hesitate. He waved his hand and shot out hundreds of black lights, which divided the 660 jade slips into 330 pieces. There were 2 jade slips in each piece, which recorded the names and identity information of the 2 young demons. At the same time, they would also become opponents. General Gulai handed the 330 jade slips to the mayor of White Mountain City. The mayor of White Mountain City took out a jade slip at random, opened the 2 jade slips and read out 2 names. "The first round of the competition starts now. The first round, Yu Wenshan versus Yang Jihua." The 2 young demons were obviously stunned when their names were called out. Then they quickly ran into the arena with anxious hearts. The 2 of them came to the arena and stood 100 feet away from each other. They looked at each other with hostility and strong fighting spirit. The mayor of White Mountain City and General Gulai retreated to the corner of the arena, assuming a posture of watching and supervising the battle. Following General Gulai's loud shout, "Start!" the two youths of the demon clan on the arena immediately unleashed their full power, displaying their secret techniques and launching a fierce attack against each other. Both of them had the strength of the 6th level of the origin core stage. Their bodies were surging with black gas and bloody light, and their fighting spirit was soaring. Their bodies turned into afterimages as they shuttled back and forth on the arena, constantly attacking and killing each other. Bang, 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 bang. The sound of collision was endless, and the muffled sound of rumbling echoed in the sky. The tens of thousands of people in the square stared at the arena without blinking. They were dazzled by the scene and they kept cheering and applauding. Ji Tianxing, on the other hand, stood quietly in the crowd without any expression on his face. Chapter 1054. In less than 15 minutes, the outcome of the battle between the two demon youths was decided. Both of them had suffered heavy injuries. Their bodies were dripping with blood and they looked miserable. Their strength was also very weak. The defeated demon youth in particular had both his legs and one of his arms broken. He was moaning in pain as he lay on the arena. However, no one sympathized with the loser. Everyone was cheering for the winner. After the White Mountain City governor announced the outcome, the winner successfully advanced to the next round. He stepped down from the arena to recuperate. The heavily injured loser gritted his teeth and struggled to get up. He carried a heart full of humiliation and disappointment as he left the arena with a gloomy expression. Then the White Mountain City governor took out 2 more jade slips and announced 2 more names. The second round began. Another 2 demon youths stepped into the arena and started a fierce battle. This battle took even less time. It only took a short 100 breaths of time to determine the victor. Then the 3rd round, the 4th round and the 5th round began. Time passed quietly. The youths of the Devil Clan fighting in the arena changed one pair after another. Almost every battle was cruel and bloody. The 2 young demons would try their best and use all kinds of methods to defeat each other. Muffled sounds of collisions and explosions rang out continuously, reverberating in the air above the square. A full 6 hours passed. Ji Tianxing had observed the fight between over 100 pairs of Devil Clan young men, and had successfully learned dozens of martial arts moves and secret techniques. He only needed to use the demon power in Oolong's body to perform these moves and secret skills. Then he could unleash the power of a Sky Origin Realm expert. This was enough for him to defeat all the contestants. After all, only a few of the 600 demon youths had reached the Sky Origin Realm. He did not want to be the first or the top few. He only wanted to be in the top 100 and become the saint's personal guard. If his performance was too outstanding, he would attract the attention of the Heaven Barbarian Demon Commander. Soon, more than 10 pairs of demon youths stepped into the arena and the outcome was decided. Finally, it was Ji Tianxing's turn. The mayor of White Mountain City announced loudly, the 198th match, Oolong vs. Xian. Along with his voice falling, a burly man that was almost 6 m tall and was as tall as a mountain of flesh walked out of the crowd, and he ascended the arena with extremely heavy footsteps. This person's body was huge and covered with bulging muscles. He looked like a mutated beast. He was bare-chested and only had a loose animal skin skirt around his waist. He carried 2 pitch-black iron hammers on his back. This person was Ji Tianxing's opponent, Xian. A young genius that possessed innate divine strength and a strength at the 8th level of the origin core stage. He walked to the ring and stood still. He took off the 2 millstone hammers from his back and looked around for his opponent with his blood-red eyes. Ji Tianxing walked through the crowd expressionlessly and stepped onto the ring indifferently. When he stood opposite Xian suddenly opened his wide mouth, revealing a disdainful sneer. Kid, you're really too small. Grandpa, I can smash you into minced meat with a single strike of my hammer. If you know what's good for you, then obediently admit defeat to Grandpa. The tens of thousands of spectators around the ring roared with laughter and mocked Oolong. As far as everyone was concerned, the outcome was already decided based on the appearance and strength of these 2 people. Everyone could guess that after the 2 of them exchanged more than 10 moves, the Black Dragon would definitely be hammered to the ground by Xian and beaten to the point of pissing his pants. However, Ji Tianxing stood on the ring expressionlessly. He did not even have the interest to look at Xian and he remained silent. Luo and De Xiong stood together in the crowd on the square. They were staring at Ji Tianxing's figure and secretly communicating via voice transmission. Zhou quickly look. That person really did come. He's also participating in the Saintess personal guard selection. Aluo, although that person's strength is very strong, it's still hard to say if he can defeat that big guy. Why do you care about that? Victory or defeat is his business. Whether he can become the Saintess personal guard is his own business. Let's not worry about it. Aluo, after all, he saved us. I still hope that he can win and become the Saintess personal guard in the future. We'll have a chance to meet again. In the crowd on the northwest side of the square, young Master Arnold was surrounded by 4 guards. At this moment, young Master Arnold's face was livid. His eyes were spitting fire as he glared at Ji Tianxing on the ring and cursed him angrily. Damned little bastard, this bastard really went into hiding. He only appeared today after hiding for so long. He's dead. In a moment, the blades will crush him into minced meat and let him have a taste of being smashed to pieces. After the competition is over, I'll take him back, let my father extract his soul and torture him to death. The guard next to him said cautiously, Young Master Arnold, I'm afraid that's not very appropriate. General Gelly is very busy. After the competition is over, he still has to accompany the demon commander. I don't care. Young Master Arnold straightened his neck and shouted angrily, I've lived in White Mountain City for more than 20 years, and no one has ever dared to touch me. He dared to break my arms, so I'll make him suffer a fate worse than death. That day I went out alone and didn't take you with me. Otherwise I wouldn't have ended up like this. If the 4 of you dare to talk nonsense again, I'll chop you up and eat you. The 4 guards were so scared that they shrank their necks and kept quiet out of fear, not daring to speak again. At this time, the White Mountain City Lord on the ring shouted loudly and announced the start of the competition. Almost at the same time as this voice sounded, Ji Tianxing, who had been indifferent and motionless, suddenly raised his eyelids. A cold light flashed in his eyes. Swoosh! He suddenly moved. His body turned into a blood-colored stream of light and rushed at Hong Shan as fast as he could. There were no complicated moves or superfluous movements. He just clenched his right hand into a fist, released a dark red bloodlight and fiercely punched at Hong Shan's chest. The power and speed of this punch had reached the limit of the origin core stage. It was so fast that it was like a flash of red light. Hong Shan, who was as huge as a mountain, did not have time to react or dodge before he was hit by this punch. Bang! With a dull bang, the blood-colored fist suddenly bloomed. Hong Shan, who was nearly 20 feet tall and as big as a house, suddenly twisted and deformed. He flew backward with blood spurting out of his 7 orifices. He rolled more than a dozen times in the air, drew an arc and sprinkled demon blood all over the sky. Then he fell heavily to the ground 10 feet away. Plop! Hong Shan smashed on the floor of the ring and no longer moved. He fainted on the spot. The competition had just begun and it was over in just a breath's time. There was no doubt that this was the shortest and most shocking competition of the day. The tens of thousands of demon civilians in the square were all stunned and petrified on the spot as they stared at Ji Tianxing. Chapter 1055. Aluo and Zhou, who were in the crowd, suddenly revealed looks of surprise and disbelief. Too terrifying. Hong Shan was actually sent flying by a single punch. This person's strength is really terrifying. It seems that he will definitely become the personal guard of the Saintess. Both of them were shocked to the point that their heartbeats accelerated and were unable to calm down for a long time. In the crowd in the northwest corner of the square, Arnold also stared in horror, his eyes full of disbelief. A moment later he came back to his senses and his face turned blue with anger, his eyes surging with rage. Bastard! Has his strength reached the sky origin stage? No, I can't let him enter the top 100 and become the personal guard of the Saintess. I have to tell my father to let Mu Rin go on stage in the next round. I must beat that little bastard on the spot. He muttered anxiously, gnashing his teeth in hatred toward Ji Tianxing. At this time the White Mountain City Lord loudly announced the result. Ji Tianxing walked down the ring with an indifferent expression amidst the cheers and exclamations of the crowd. Hong Shan, who had fainted on the ground, was also carried down the ring by the guards of the City Lord's mansion. Next, the White Mountain City Lord read out the names of the demon youths one after another. 8 hours later, the curtain of night fell. The first round of the arena tournament was finally over. Half of the 660 demon youths successfully advanced, while the other half were eliminated. Although the dark curtain of night shrouded White Mountain City, dozens of torches lit up around the square like lighthouses, illuminating the whole square. The arena tournament continued. The White Mountain City Lord waved his hand and sent out 330 jade slips to General Galay for the second round of drawing lots. General Galay released hundreds of blood lights and quickly divided the more than 300 jade slips into 165 copies, completing the drawing of lots. Then the White Mountain City Lord announced in a dignified voice, "The second round of the arena tournament begins." The first round. The two demon youths whose names were called stepped onto the ring one after another and began to fight. Ji Tianxing stood quietly in the crowd, silently watching the fight on the ring and observing the moves of the demon youths. In the past month he had become more and more familiar with the demon race. He also had a more thorough understanding of the demon race's power attribute, the characteristics of their martial arts and the ways to crack them. The reason why he wanted to steal their techniques was to prepare for the future. Because he was very sure that in the near future he would have to fight the demon race to the death. The deeper his understanding of the demon race, the greater his chances of winning the decisive battle in the future. Unknowingly, it was already late at night. Within 6 hours, more than 90 pairs of youths from the demon clan fought each other on the stage, and the outcome was decided. At midnight, it was finally Ji Tianxing's turn. The White Mountain City's city lord announced loudly, "The 120th match, Oolong vs. Yu." Ji Tianxing immediately walked out of the crowd and stepped onto the stage, standing there. Previously, the scene of him punching Fei Hong Mountain had left a deep impression on countless people, making everyone remember him. Now that he had appeared again, the tens of thousands of people in the square immediately revealed expressions of excitement and anticipation as they whispered to each other. Then a demon man wearing black armor and a black helmet, carrying a heavy sword on his back, stepped onto the ring. This man was tall and strong, emitting cold, murderous intent, like a human-shaped weapon, showing an extremely dangerous aura. Unfortunately, his helmet covered his face, only showing a pair of dark purple eyes. No one could see his face. Tens of thousands of people in the square were all looking at Ji Tianxing, so no one noticed the man in armor named Yu. However, when Ji Tianxing saw Yu enter the arena, he frowned and a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. Damn it! Which tribe is this young genius from? Has he reached Sky Origin Stage Level 6? That's impossible. Among the hundreds of young demons in the competition, the most powerful ones are only at Sky Origin Stage Level 1 or Level 2. A demon at Sky Origin Stage Level 6 is powerful enough to be a king in a small tribe, and a demon general in a battlefield. There must be something wrong with this guy. And you had used some kind of secret treasure to hide his cultivation level, so that normal Sky Origin Stage cultivators couldn't see through him. However, he couldn't hide from Ji Tianxing's soul detection. Ji Tianxing realized something was wrong, so he stared at Yu vigilantly, thinking about how to deal with him. At this moment, Yu walked to 30 meters away from him and looked at him coldly. He sent a message to him, "Boy, your death is coming. I will crush all the bones in your body in front of everyone and turn you into a limp worm. I will let you have a taste of living a life worse than death." Ji Tianxing frowned and sent a message to Yu, "You know me? Do we have a grudge against each other?" A cruel and mocking sneer appeared in Yu's eyes as he sent a voice transmission. "Ha! You'll understand once you climb down from the arena. You are just a bastard from a small tribe. How dare you behave so atrociously in White Mountain City? You are courting death. You have offended someone you shouldn't have. You should wash your neck and wait for your death." Hearing Yu's words, Ji Tianxing finally understood and confirmed his guess. "I see. This Yu is really an expert in disguise. He must be here to avenge that young Shura clan man." Thinking of this, a murderous intent flashed in his eyes. At this moment, the governor of White Mountain City said loudly, "The battle begins now. Wait." Ji Tianxing did not attack. He raised his right hand and shouted, interrupting the White Mountain City Lord's words. Suddenly, the governor of White Mountain City, General Gulai, and Yu looked at him coldly. The tens of thousands of people in the square also quieted down and looked at him in confusion. Ji Tianxing pointed at Yu and said expressionlessly, Governor General, there is something wrong within you. He is not one of the young geniuses who are participating in the battle. He chose to tell the truth in front of everyone and expose Yu's identity. However, before he could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by General Gelii. Shut up. General Gulai shouted in a dignified tone. He released a powerful aura and suppressed Ji Tianxing. All the participants in this time's arena competition are young geniuses from various tribes, and they have the documents and tokens of their respective tribes. Furthermore, this general and the city lord have also carefully screened them. Blunder. You dare to question your opponent's identity. You are challenging the dignity of the governor and me. The governor of White Mountain City also stared at him coldly and shouted, Blunder. If you're scared, then admit defeat and surrender now. Don't spoil the competition. The Heaven Barbaric Demon General is supervising the battle. If you continue to pester me, I will punish you. When Ji Tianxing saw the reaction of General Gulai and the governor of White Mountain City, he immediately understood everything. He sneered in his heart. These two obviously know that there is something wrong with Yu's identity and want to cover for him. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.